I don't know if it looks like we're live. It's Straturday night. We got David Allen Wright. We got David Nesdahl, Johnny Beane in the house. Don't forget to subscribe to Johnny Beane Live, Johnny Beane's second channel. I'm sure Nightbot will be showing those up. So we're going to be talking NAMM. We're going to be talking guitars and everything else. How's everyone doing? David and David, how you guys doing?
I'm good. Tired, but I'm good.
I'm doing good. I'm tired also. I'm in bed tonight because I've been going for 3 days straight for the NAMM and I'm wore out.
Yeah. Well, whatever you can tell us, you've been off the air. You were telling us some great stories. Cool to hear your perspective on being there.
Oh yeah. You know, NAMM.
Where are you now? You're home at your own home.
Yeah, I'm back in that. I live in Nashville here, so
you live in Nashville, and NAMM,
NAMM
was right up the street from you.
but costs $40 a day to park. Just think of that, to park there, and it's about 8 miles from me downtown. And the new convention center is really huge. They only use half of the convention center space. So when you see the NAMM show in Summer NAMM, they're only using really a quarter really of the whole convention center.
Really?
They're using the main conference floor. They're using only half of it. The convention center is huge, but it's not as big as Summer NAMM is not as huge anymore as much as Anaheim is, because NAMM used to be really huge in the 90s, and in 2004 was the last year they had the original NAMM in Nashville, and it was massive. I mean, it took 3 days to go through it, to be honest with you. We had stage lighting, all the different musical corporations, everybody was there, and it was really big. And then they moved it to Indianapolis, and then when they did that, it really changed dramatically. And then they moved to Austin for 2 years, and then they finally came back to Nashville. But that's really the NAMM history. Because I've been going to
Summer NAMM, right?
Summer NAMM, yes, Summer NAMM.
And now has Winter NAMM always been in Anaheim? Or?
Yes, for years and years. To my knowledge, for God, I think since the existence, because everything's really based on the West Coast. And then they used to have Summer NAMM in Chicago, back years and years ago. They had it in Chicago. Mm-hmm. They moved it to Atlanta. Then they decided they want to bring it to Nashville because it was more of a music scene in the late 80s, early 90s, so. But I've been going to it. I was thinking today, I was telling somebody I've been going probably about 26 years, maybe every year, except for Indianapolis. I didn't go to Indianapolis or Austin. I just didn't feel like it was worth it because all my vendors were telling me the stories about not many people showed up. So, but Nashville's being built back up. I mean, the NAMM show now is getting a bigger presence, but you have to understand another part of NAMM. 2 parts of NAMM you got to understand. The first thing about NAMM is everything now is going to a web e-commerce system now. Everything's going online. Everybody can be able to go buy things online now. Like I was talking to Reverb people today about how they do the encapsulation security systems on their buying systems and stuff. And but the other part of NAMM I do is I usually go there for networking. I'm there like on a Thursday afternoon meeting with people. Then Friday, it's mostly business for me because I have to meet with a lot of different vendors and corporations. And also I have dinner with multiple different parties at night, like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Well, not tonight, but I'm saying Thursday night and Friday night I had to do a lot of meetings. Wednesday night also. But it's all about business, really, because when I go in, I have to actually meet with partners and vendors and stuff to find out what they're looking for, because I have to look at the next 8 to 12 months of window of what needs to be presented in certain avenues of musical equipment and guitars and amps and stuff.
Cool. So what did you see this year? What really caught your eye?
Well, there was quite a few little things. They changed the layout this year on the NAMM floor. They moved all the drum sections over where it used to be all the major guitar parts were. And so it kind of threw me for a loop Thursday when I walked in. So one of the first thing I did was, Fender has their their booth is EVH Artist Series of Fender. Is outside of the main avenue. They actually have it in the hallway area, which is a great conceptual idea because you can get more web traffic. More traffic walking through the hallway than foot traffic going through the hallways, which is a great conceptual idea. I like that idea. And then Fender has a main area in the center, pretty much the center, that shows all the showcases of USA and artist models and stuff like that they've built over the years. But the Jackson EVH Gretsch was in the main hallway area, so they can get more foot traffic that way. And then this year, one thing I will say that I was so surprised was Gibson had a massive presence there this year. Due to changes in the business that they had this year. Usually they don't do that big of a presence in Nashville because, they send, what Gibson's been doing for years is they send everybody to the factory and then they get to tour the factory and they get to tour, the headquarters and everything. But this year they wanted to do a NAMM presence to show that they're actually doing a Gibson presentation, for sales, to show that, they're still Gibson,
You think it's kind of their comeback after a little bit of
I think so.
Some rough times.
Yes, rough times.
Was it this past winter when they skipped, or last winter when they skipped? I think it was kind of big news.
I think it was last winter, wasn't it? I think it's they skipped, and then the CEO was transitioning from Gibson to Philips Electronics, and the Gibson brand. The Gibson Corporation had they had Wurlitzer, they had a lot of different companies tied to them, Baldwin pianos and different ones, different business segments. They have Steinberg, they have
Kramer,
and Kramer Guitar Corporation, and then also this one I didn't see Winter NAMM as much as I wanted to because I was so busy at work because I didn't get to go to Anaheim this last year, but that's last January. But Kramer is trying to do a bigger presence because in the early 90s, late 90s and 2000s, when Kramer was sold off from the Michael Jackson Corporation to Gibson, because that was in a bankruptcy when Michael Jackson went bankrupt years ago. He owned Kramer Guitar Corporation.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yes.
Michael Jackson owned Kramer for...
Henry Varia, Senior and Junior, were at the NAMM show in 2004, and they were telling me the stories about all that. I said, what happened to Kramer? Because, there were the people that funded everything back in the 70s, parts of the Kramer. And then Henry was telling me, oh, here's what happened. And then when the Michael Jackson Corporation went bankrupt in the late 2002 or 2003, Gibson went in and because they already owned Steinberg, and they bought Kramer rights and royalties and everything from them. And then they owned it, and then they tried to rebrand it a few times. You remember back in 2000s, they came out with a couple of different ones, because that's where I met Dino the first time, and Mike Wolfer. Mike from Vintage Kramer. I met all the Vintage Kramer guys at the conventions here in Nashville. It was really cool. And met all those people. And that's where I met Paul Unkert the first time, because I met all these people at these conventions and started networking. But this is way before the, Facebook and internet and everything. You had to do the old snail mail. You remember the old snail mail?
Yeah.
Like, fill out an envelope and mail it to somebody, then wait 2 weeks for a response. And then you had your old Telnet internet systems back in the old days, emails and stuff. You would have to do like a chat. Old days were, it was different then because, you'd have to send a response and 2 days later you get a response back, or
if you're lucky,
if you're lucky. Because me and Rob Johnson was talking about that a while back, some of the old chat relay systems back in the old days when you had to go into websites and type in the information and then wait for the response back.
Oh, wow.
It's really drastically changed. Think about how much it's changed in 20 years of technology. Now we have cell phones. 20 years ago, you had to take a camera with you to take all the pictures, and they were low resolution. I was talking to people from Kodak today over 4K. So 4K and 8K has come out now, and that's going to be the real revolutionary stuff.
Well, I've been following, just to kind of tie it in, I've been following the Apollo 50th anniversary. And that's, technology right there. That was the height of technology, 1969, 50 years ago. and they were doing some of that stuff, broadcasting live from the moon, and the radio relays and everything was all analog back then. But and even the computer systems that they had, I mean, we've all heard the stories of how primitive it was. But I've been following. There's a couple of great. There's a YouTube site that follows it live, so you can if after the broadcast you can follow it, and you can rewind. You can go back to any point in the whole mission, and it's cool stuff. So that's all I'll say about that for now. But yeah,
just think
I'm fascinated by it.
Think about vacuum tubes for a minute. Vacuum tubes were in the 50s. That's where all your TVs came from, radios came from. NASA used a lot of vacuum tubes. It's incredible the technology. We went from vacuum tubes to transistors, now to solid state diodes now with solid state hard drives. It's really changed because I was talking to somebody yesterday about analog record players, the old phonographs. Think about this for a minute. I used to get the old albums back in the early 80s, and you had to buy needles every 3 weeks or maybe a month at Radio Shack or whatever, the old companies. You would have to buy this stuff, and then your records would wear out after so long. Then we went to digital media. CDs came out. Then now we have non-moving technology parts like solid state hard drives now.
No moving parts.
Totally.
Yeah.
No
Flash media, all that.
Exactly. And look at what's happened in the last 20 years. You don't have to buy your, albums are coming back from the warmth of audio and analog systems now. But I still believe that the technology is really incredible. And I think it will go into some of the musical technologies later, because I can get details about MIDI 2. I've been working with MIDI 2 synchronization, working with analog to digital back to analog, and transcomponent devices. That's what I was talking to a couple of vendors today about. So
cool.
Really
I love that. I love the history of all that. The PCM audio, the FM synthesis, and all that kind of stuff. The early, what was the like the all-in-one recording studio computer back in the early 80s? That was it. Not the Sinclair. The Synclavier, the Synclavier 1 and 2. Those, early DAWs that, it was well before MIDI, and it was all analog, and it was all just FM synthesis and that kind of stuff.
It's like, I'll tell you another one real quick. Nobody's come out with one yet. They come out with a rack model a few years ago, but the Obium, you remember the Obium keyboards that Rush used, Van Halen did?
The Oberheim, right? Yeah.
Oberheim. They're all Oberheim. That's it.
OB1,
Yeah, the OX-B2 or something like that, or OBXB. I'll have to look at it again, but it's all analog. So here's the thing. I was talking to a couple of people from Casio yesterday about MIDI 2 technologies. Sorry, I don't mean to get off guitars, but I'm saying I look at everything.
I'm loving it. I don't know. I'm sure the rest of everyone else is following you.
I could talk all about wood components, nanotechnology of wood, and everything later. But what I've been working on lately is some of the MIDI 2 transposing systems from analog to digital back to analog. Okay, so what I've been trying to figure out is nobody, when the keyboard company went out of business years ago, that was all analog systems. Nobody's come out with a reproduction of that, so that when you see one of those old keyboards, they're like $4,000 on eBay, but you have to go back through them because they used analog technology systems. It's like buying, a used guitar. You have to go through the pickup and check the windings and all that stuff, and the pots and everything.
Times 10 on a keyboard.
Yes. Like it's like when you were in a recording studio years ago, you'd have these, 64 track or 128 track recording studios, and every one of those potentiometer knobs had resistance issues. You always have to carry a contact cleaner in your bag with you, when you're working on recording technologies back in the day, so
yeah.
Or playing live, you always have to have your own kits to work on guitars and amps and stuff like that, because you may have problems with connectivity,
like scratchy pots and that kind of scratchy faders, all that.
Yep. And it puts a segmented into the Burns pots, because Fender is using, and certain guitars are using those burn pots, the Burns, because they have a higher application system, so they don't have static versus some of the Switchcraft and some of the other technologies, and that's where, so there's an interesting story behind this in a way, meaning that there's certain artists that want to take something from 1979 and bring it up to today's standards. So think of that from an aspect of what you're looking at sometimes in some of these pictures. What it is certain artists want these things up to this level because their expectation now is to this level in 2019, not 1979. So you can make something look like something from 1979, but you need to. So somebody says, "Hey, I want this added. I want this added." Well, hold on a minute. Now you change the 1979 perspective of year
specs that were available
to 2019. So you have to understand there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes of this, meaning you can you can paint a guitar, you can make it a relic, you can make it, look like a 1968 Strat or whatever, or Jimi Hendrix's Monterey Pop Fest lighter fluid guitar, but you got to understand that body is not that year model. You can recreate a Stradivarius. Just think of this. You can recreate a Stradivarius, but you'll never have a Stradivarius because you have to age that wood 400 years.
Right.
So, but there's certain people that require, hey, that's great that you made it look like this, this accuracy, but I want to add these components to it. Or I want to add this to it.
Well, it depends on how far you want to go and what direction you want to go. It's like restoring an old car. Do you want it to be just roadworthy? Do you want it to be museum quality? And that's, with any instrument, it's the same thing.
So everybody, I kind of heard this too. Everybody's a critic. I thought that was kind of funny when I heard that from some people today, yesterday and today. And I said, everybody has a heart. They have an investment because, that's a time period in their life. They got to see something, or they saw an album cover, And you remember the old days, man, before internet come along, you always had an album cover and the front and the back of that. And then you would listen to the album, but you didn't have any real logistical information because what happened was you had the album cover, then you would have to see the band live. Back in those days you didn't have the internet like you do now. MTV wasn't even existing back in until 1980, somewhere 1980
81.
Yeah, and it took years because they had like 8 videos when MTV first come out. When I got it, it was like 8 videos, revolving.
And half of them were Rod Stewart.
Yeah, and stuff like that. But I'm saying then you had to see bands in concert, and then you would have to get Cream magazine and Hit Parader and all those magazines back in the old days. And you go to the magazine stores and read them.
To be a rock fan, you had to really work at it.
Or go to the library and read Rolling. I used to go to the library every weekend. Because one of my other heroes is Albert Einstein and Nicholas Tesla. So I used to read all his books and stuff.
Excellent, yeah.
I used to read books all the time. And then I go to the library and get the Rolling Stone magazine at the library and read it, say, hey, so-and-so is playing or some bands getting ready to tour. And then, you always want to keep up on information because information back then was so scarce than now.
Yeah.
You go to a website and you can get almost all the history in 30 minutes or 20 minutes of reading. It's amazing now compared to what it was like. It was like full data mining back in the day, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I would go to the library and search out all that stuff through Rolling Stone and every kind of archive you could find of rock history. And
absolutely. So I'm not sure. I haven't seen the chat. I'm sorry, guys. I just see this.
I could listen to you for hours. It's great stuff, though.
So I don't know if anybody's got any questions at the moment. I'll try to answer what I can. To a certain extent, I can't go into a lot of details due to I got to deal with some NDA stuff. It's non-disclosure information.
Yeah, don't get yourself in trouble. Yeah. Don't get yourself in trouble.
So I can ask. I can explain some things in some level, but not a lot. Maybe it's mostly general information. Like I saw the Kramer guitars at NAMM. That I got to play a few of them. They're still using the 84 type style neck. You remember the Kramer neck they came out with, years ago? It had the 84 version. They still use that, and then they're using some of the late 80s, and I saw the Jersey Star, version at NAMM. It was a red one. It had the 3 humbuckers in it, and it has the like a 1980s 88 or 89 headstock on it. Had the tilt back headstock on it. Had the stars and inlays and stuff. Got to see that.
Was it not the like Eddie Star
or the Bon Jovi?
Okay.
No, yeah, the John Budge. Richie Sambora Star.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Jersey Star guitar. That was the
Jersey.
version.
Yes. Yeah. Gotcha.
I saw that one. I got to play it a few minutes, but man, on Saturdays, everybody has to understand on NAMM, they open up to the public. I used to not do this for years, but now they opened up where you can buy a ticket, you can go in the public. So the best time to go to NAMM from an aspect of doing business is like on a Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday is pretty much a day where that you see people wandering around. You do a lot of connectivities and stuff. I did meet Steve from Boston. I don't know his real name, but you remember the guy Steve from Boston?
Him in the chat, yeah.
He does the videos a lot, the videos on YouTube. God, he does I saw him. It's like, I know you from somewhere. We started talking. He's like, yeah, I do YouTube videos. I was like, that's where I saw you from. He talks about, he rates guitars and stuff a lot. I saw him do a comparison of a Chinese Gibson versus a US Gibson, stuff like that. He did that a few years ago. And I said, well, it's nice to meet you. Last year, I did meet Adam Reaver today. I met him in the hallway. Got to talk to him about 20 minutes. We were talking about some tremolos and stuff, So I got to, it's mostly a lot of networking on Saturdays. Like I go do a lot of business networking on Thursdays and Fridays and some Wednesday evenings, depends on if I have appointments and schedules. But on Saturdays, mostly you meet people like, the YouTube people, the people will come up to you and start asking, hey, you're David, right? It's like, yeah, I'm David, all this stuff. And I explained to him, I was like, well, I got to be somewhere in 10 minutes, and, but you have all these vendors. So the NAMM show is like a big, huge trade show with all these vendors there. And they're there to generate business. This is supposed to be the East Coast version versus the West Coast. But there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of networking, a lot of, talking, because I was talking to a lot of companies today about some CAD designs and stuff, and laser cutting and stuff, because I'm working on water jets now, laser jets, and CAD machines.
Speaking of that, I'm looking at the guitar next to you. Is that something you designed?
That's the Christopher Locke body from last year. That's the double neck.
Yeah.
I got to finish it up one of these days. I got the necks in the other room. That is the yellow and black one. I'll finish up eventually. Me and him.
Is that a CAD design?
Yeah, Chris did it.
Yeah.
And then he made it for me, and I let Chris build all my bodies and stuff, really, because I'd rather, he's an expert in his domain area that I want him to, flourish in this. So I recommend everybody to use his website and, let him cut the bodies for you. What I'm working on now is like little stuff. Like I want to work on like bridges and tremolos, mounting systems for humbucker stuff. I got some ideas on some cool things that I want to do. Different things that I really want to go after now that I want to build for myself, because I want to look at things that somebody may have come up with or invented yet, and I want to work on those. So I like supporting other builders and other people, because it may take you 100 hours to paint a Frankenstein guitar. Okay, just say 100 hours to paint it, relic it, and everything. That means everything, the wear and everything. I don't have time for that, so it's better to have somebody that's a complete domain expert to let them do that. Unless my life and my schedule is so busy, but other people might have the time to do this, But I just don't have the time anymore.
Yeah, if you can source it out and you can get it done right within your budget, then hey,
exactly. And
hey, you guys.
Hey, Johnny.
Hey, guys. Sorry, I didn't mean to crash your party.
Johnny and David Nesdahl in the house too.
Oh yeah.
I'm just waiting for someone to take a breath.
Yeah, we could talk to David
Holy
for hours.
crap.
David, I'm loving I'm loving all this. It's good stuff.
I haven't seen the 84 in a long time. That 84 Kramer back there.
Oh yeah.
I still gotta get my neck redone. I got mine's mine doesn't have the neck on it. I got to put the neck on it eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. FedEx back in the day, and I broke my neck, and so I still got to put it back together one of these days. But yeah, that reminds me about the '84. See, it's something else I haven't done yet.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you guys. Hey, Tony. Tony's here. Phil Mosley music. John Harden. That's David Allen Wright. I don't know if you've been if you've been around for a while. Well, David Allen used to come on with us like years ago.
Yeah,
like a long time ago.
David, can you just give us a quick bio, like, you know, of your kind of background? I know I've watched the show for, you know, a year or so anyway, and but some of those guys in the chat may not know who you are. And
yeah, that's good comment, because I met Johnny and Dave and a few other people a few years ago on Facebook. You know, when Facebook was and we were talking about guitars at one time, you know, different ones, Steinbergs and Kramers and stuff. It really started with Kramer guitars or the Van Halen guitars and stuff. And we started talking about different things. And but I live in Nashville. I've been doing, I play like 9 instruments. You know, I play in Nashville. You have to be very multiple talented. You can't just play 1 or 2 instruments in Nashville. You have to be very talented, because one night somebody might call you up and say, hey, I need a drummer. I may need a bass player or a guitar player or a piano player. So you got to play multiple instruments and you have to practice. I used to practice a lot when I was a kid, like 6 or 7 hours a night, you know, learn theory and all that stuff. You know, when I grew up, I was growing up around the Randy Rhoads, the Eddie Van Halen, the Rush, you know, the band Rush. My hero was Neil Peart and stuff like that. I really wanted to. And then, you know, when you, like we talked about earlier, you have to really get familiar with your artists back in the old days, because you didn't have the internet like you do nowadays. And then I got an engineering background, so mechanical and electrical, and then software. So I do a lot of different variations. I get kind of bored. I will tell you this. I get really bored quickly, like when I start building stuff. You know, it's like, okay, I did that, get that out of the way. Let me do this. Let me work on that. Let me work on different things. And so I like diversity. You know, I don't want to work in one domain of an area. So, and then I was talking, we had a show quite a few years ago, and it turned into like 5 hours or something like that. We started talking about all the different guitars and builds, and it's amazing, you know, because when I talk to people, a lot of times it's around business centric information. It's not around, like, you know, being a fan of something or a fan of some music here, and you can be able to talk about it, you know, because sometimes it's fairly difficult when you talk to people in certain domain areas, because they're really business centric. They're only designed for the meeting or the information to understand that it's all about business for them. They don't really want to hear all the stories, you know, stuff like that. So you have to understand that part of it. So, but if anybody has any questions, they can ask me and stuff. And I'm on Facebook too, and I have a few group pages. But if there's some information I found out the other night, it's really interesting about social media. Let me just say that it's really interesting from a business perspective of companies where they use social media now. They, you know, a lot of companies now are reaching out and figuring out how to use social media for their advertising. You know, billboards does not exist like we used to think, in a way, and TV and commercials. Now everything's going to YouTube in the perspectives, social media systems. And now companies are really trying to get a hold around that to a point so they can be able to control some of the information to a point. So, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ramble on, but
no.
If anybody has any questions or see anything, they can always, like I said, I can't see the chat from here.
Yeah, well, let's check in with the chat. I guess we'll do a roll call. Well, you guys have been patient for, I don't know how long we've been on for a little while. We got Zach Thong, Dr. Jimmy, the Dog Pa, Quentin James is out there, Phil Mosley, Harmony. Let's see who else. Dennis Brialt, John Harden, Zach Thong's out there. Say hey to Zach Thong. Fruitcake Tony. How you doing, Fruitcake? David Ennis. JR. Let's see. Nerd Halen was out there a little while ago. Hey, what's up? Hey, Daw. I don't know if he's still in the chat. Join us if you're around, Nerd Halen. Quentin James. I think that's anybody else I missed. Ron Paget. Josco Plumbing. And everyone else. James Gum. Zach Thong, everybody else. David Nesdall, how you doing tonight?
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah,
all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. So, again, we're talking Summer NAMM. We're talking tech and everything else. We could listen to David Allen Wright for hours. I love the tech stuff. You were talking about Tesla and Einstein, and it all ties back to that kind of stuff, you know.
Yep.
The original, you know, I was looking at the history of NAMM, and I guess the first NAMM show was 1901 in New York City.
Wow.
You know, and it's music merchandisers. You know, I guess probably Gibson was there back then.
Mm-hmm.
Martin and all of them. You know.
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, the legacy goes on.
I wondered in New York, let me think about this. 1901 New York, they had to have DC electricity then because AC was not created then. So you have to think, you know, DC, almost all the old houses back in the turn of the century was powered off a DC current. You know, that's what Edison created. Thomas Edison created DC power, and they ran everything off of DC power. So you have to think, you know, AC didn't come about in another
Tesla
8 years, I think it was, you know, something like that. Yeah. So Tesla came out with AC alternative current, but just think about.
Yeah, and Edison resisted it for 20 years. It sounds like, you know, into the 20s, and then finally he relented. Shortly before his death, I guess. You know, a decade or so. I've read his bio. I read his bio years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
I don't know. They had horses back then, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
NAMM parking was horses and.
Well, yeah, 1901. I mean, they didn't really have cars. They had you know, trains, and the first airplane wasn't even invented. You know,
I wonder when was the first electric steel strings created, because everything was nylon string, gut strings back in those days. So that gives me an interesting topic to research. Is when was the first electric strings?
When it was first practical to kind of make steel on mass production in the was it Bessemer? You know, that process in the late 1800s, I think, and then you just have to extrude it in ever smaller increments. But I would guess the late 1800s, around that time, was some of the first steel string instruments.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then your pickups and electricity, you know, your AC current would come into about later. Then you would have your single coils, because when was the first electric guitar Fender built before Gibson? What was it, in 52, 51, 52?
The Nocaster or the Broadcaster?
Yeah. First guitar, that would be 1949 Fender Broadcaster.
Yeah, and that was a prototype, right? Or was that
They started making them in 49.
They sold them to the public?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, Dave is he's frozen.
Did we lose Dave?
We lost Dave. He probably fell asleep.
Well, I'm loving it. I'm loving talking to Dave here. So, I mean, that's I don't know.
David Allen, wake up.
Hey, Harmony. Hey, John Moronic.
Wake up.
I'm not typing anymore.
Hey, Harmony.
Johnny, how you doing
Green
tonight?
Bay. Hey, Green Bay.
Green Bay Wacky's in the house.
Good to see you, Green Bay. And Green Bay, I did watch your entire video. I was standing here. Well, it doesn't matter, but I watched your entire video this afternoon. All 20 minutes of it.
20 minutes. That's a short video for Green Bay, man.
Well, actually, that's a short video for any. For
Yeah.
us, yeah. No, he was talking about the whole. I probably shouldn't even say what it was about, but the whole hey, if you follow me, I'll follow you back, kind of deal.
Yeah.
On YouTube, which is pretty big, and it's an interesting video actually. Actually, go over to Green Bay's page at some point, and actually, well, here.
After this video, when this video is done,
where am I? Yeah, or every. I know I just said that. Now I'm going to say subscribe to Green Bay.
He'll probably be live at about 4 a.m. when we're wrapping things up. So
4 a.m.
That's Green Bay's time, man.
Mm-hmm. He's live all the time. He goes live.
I love it. It's
all
cool.
Different hours of the day and the night. And I hope David Allen is okay.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure he's okay.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Yeah, David, we lost you for a minute.
Yeah. This is what happens when you're dealing with 5G networks of wireless. Sorry about that.
What?
Someone rang your doorbell?
Is there something better than 5G that I don't know about?
Well, I'm having problems with some of the 5G Windows 10 drivers. I've got like 8 different laptops, but I have one computer that I'm having some issues with HP computer systems with 5G. I've changed I've got 2 different routers here that I run, and man, this if it does it again, I'll switch to the other computer, my CAD machine that I use. So.
Dave, you got to go Mac, man.
Oh, I got one of those too. Yeah, I just don't use the Mac as much as I use the IBM, operating systems. The Windows.
Well, for Hangouts, Google is all the way. You got to go, kind of Google, no matter what. If it's Mac or PC, you gotta. That's what I figured out.
Yep, and it's.
And it'll be going away in a week or so.
Well, what's happening now with Google? I didn't know this. Are they changing something?
Well, Johnny, isn't that's the rumor at the end of July?
Yeah.
End of Hangouts?
August 1st, they're ditching Hangouts finally.
Really?
Yeah.
Not finally. It's sadly,
Wow.
It's worked out well. It's worked out well.
What are they going to go to replacement technology? Have they said anything about that?
I think they want people to sign up for what is it? Green Bay would know. Green Bay does all the same stuff.
Okay.
I know there's Google Duo. Just another. I think they want people to go for. I think there's going to be a paid service.
Yeah, like
how to do.
Okay, because I use a lot of WebEx and Skype. When I talk to certain business people in different segments of business, we use Skype because we have to use encapsulation security systems because for technology systems, because we have to be very careful on our information we send out to different parties in business and stuff. So, but yeah, I didn't realize that it was going away. Interesting.
Green Bay says he's using Zoom now and he loves it.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We looked into that. Like, when was that?
A year ago.
A year ago, we were trying all that stuff because I wanted to get away from Hangouts anyway. Because there's so much more you can do with OBS.
Okay.
It's all BS.
Yeah. So it looks like they're finally making us do that now, That's right, Jimmy T.
Yeah,
Dr. Jimmy.
Dr. Jimmy.
What happened? Jimmy T, that's another guy, right?
Yeah, it's not the same guy. Dr. Jimmy is James Orcutt.
Yes.
Well, let's show it for him.
I know, nobody sees that.
So does anybody have any
Dave,
questions?
say it.
Does anybody have any questions at the moment in the chat that they may want me to answer to a point, or have any questions?
Nothing as of yet. I've been
Okay.
I've been reading.
Yeah. Any questions for David Allen Wright? Just type DAW in the chat with your question or comment. And John, what about Streamlabs? I use Streamlabs all the time when it's just me by myself, and I think I can still use it with. I just have to use something else to use it with, you know. And I have to burp, so that's why I can't.
Right. Fruitcake Tony, yes. He says, so Dave, after the Broadcaster in 49, Fender's first production guitar was the Stratocaster in 54. Actually, it was the Broadcaster. Then in 1950, it became the Nocaster because Gretsch sued Fender because Gretsch had a drum kit called the Broadcaster. So what Fender did was they just snipped the word Broadcaster off their Fender decal and put just the Fender decal on. It was called the Nocaster. And in late 51, that became the Telecaster because someone at Fender, I don't remember who, said, TV is the newest, biggest thing, television. So let's call our guitar the Telecaster. And after that, yes, then the Stratocaster in 1954.
You thinking that people would play Telecasters on TV?
Well, yeah,
maybe.
You would think, yeah.
Everything was it was like a caster, Stratocaster, Strato Fortress. It was like the space age kind of thing. I'm looking at. I just grabbed my Fender book, so see if we can find the early Nocasters and the.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to talk amongst yourself. Here's the whole, Telecaster history sort of thing.
And the concept of thinking about pickups. Think about the first designs of the pickups, because you had to have been very creative to come up with a first pickup. Because think about putting a magnet and wrapping a copper coil around it to electrify each string, from an analog perspective in the early 50s. Just think it like, 40, 48, 49, and 50, building the first humbucker. And well, not humbucker, but single hole pickup, because you had to be really creative to think of that kind of stuff back in the day. Because nobody ever come out with that before that, So that's what kind of baffles my mind. How did somebody come up with something? Like reading about Nikola Tesla, all the stuff that he come up with is like, where was his mind at the moment to understand how he created that? There's 1,000 things.
It was aliens, wasn't it? Aliens.
Yeah. There's 1,000 things that haven't been created yet. When I go to the NAMM show, I come up with like 15 to 20 different ideas at the moment, that I have not seen in the marketplace yet. And it's like, okay, so I would talk to certain people. That's why I spend like 20 to 30 minutes talking to each individual vendor, and it takes me, 3 days to get through the NAMM show. So, you come off with different ideas that you can come up with, and you create perspectives and stuff, because a few years ago they came out with the digital guitars. I got a couple of them around here laying around, but they had one that's like it simulates strings, but it's a digital processing mechanism, and they got the latency down really fast on the strings, but it never caught on. Everybody still wants a mechanical.
You mean the Fender ones?
Yeah, they had one a few years ago.
The VG.
Yes,
right?
The Roland stuff. You remember the old Roland stuff back years ago? They had the MIDI processors. Those they just never. I think there's a niche market there for those, and they just never went over really well. I mean, it never sold in massive quantities. MIDI come a long way since the 80s and early 90s. Now they got MIDI 2 out now with a newer transponders that represents the speed latencies of milliseconds, and it's come down quite a bit. But I just never saw the transformation from the guitar perspective into the piano perspective, really. Yeah.
Some of those Casio, Roland guitars.
Yeah.
I have that book.
Yeah. I think Johnny's got you have the Casio, right? One of those Casios, right?
I have one of the
one on the top, maybe?
I have one that's similar to the one on the top. It's not that exact one, but it's similar to it. Yeah. And the tracking sucks.
Well, that was 80s technology. I'm sure they've come a long way now. Are they still working on that kind of stuff, David?
Yeah, to a point. I didn't. One thing I haven't noticed is rolling.
Is there such a
anymore.
thing as like a digital pickup? Something that'll pick up. Yeah.
Yeah. Gibson. I'll tell you a really quick story, real quick. I bought a Gibson Darkfire at a pawn shop a few years ago here in Nashville. I found one, and it was a red type of dark type mahogany red. Gibson Les Paul. I didn't know what it was at first, and I went there, and they wanted this amount of money for it. And it's like, I thought, well, it's a Gibson. Being in Nashville, you can get Gibsons for about $1,200, $1,600 a lot of times in different stores and pawn shops and stuff. But I got this thing for $400, I think, because they had it for 3 years. I'm the only one that picked it up. Okay, so come to find out, I picked it up and played it one day, and it has a digital. It's almost like a Ripley, the Bartolini pickup with. It's got individual coils tapping or all individual coils for each string. So you can do 6-string modulation like a Ripley, stereo Ripley. And this thing has 2 modulation boxes and everything. So what happened was, if anybody wants to go out and look up a Gibson Darkfire, this thing's like 20 years ahead of its time. Okay. And it didn't really sell well because it was so technology advanced. Okay. It's like, I was talking to Steve a few years ago. Steve Ripley told me, his Kramer Ripleys were really ahead of the time. People didn't understand what they had at the time, until certain artists would record with them and stuff, and then Eddie made them really popular when he was on a guitar for the Practice of Musician in 84. He had a cover, and there it is. And the pickup and those, if you see the 4 control knobs, the first control knob up there actually has a robotic tuner systems in it. So you pull up on the knob and turn it, and you can go to different tunings. This thing's got a tuning mechanism in it, and the motor's at the top of so like if you want open G, you pull it up, break across it, and it tunes it to open G automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's part of the robotic tuner systems that everybody was talking about for years. This thing had every advanced technology in this guitar that everybody what happened was Gibson wanted to say, hey, we're going to put everything into this one guitar. And it's like I say, it's got 2 interface modules with it. And it's very complex. Okay, so let me go back real quick. So you remember Eddie had the Super Pluto, the Telecaster Ripley. Mm-hmm. Well, I've always wanted to build that guitar, and I want to build it eventually because it's got 3 humbuckers in it, but it's got individual strings for each pots for each individual string. And then it has a blending mixing control system on the back. All those knobs back there, those are blend controls like a mixer. Okay, you could do stereo, you could do distortion, you could do all the different ones. That's how Steve was telling me a few years ago about that. So what happens is but there's a MIDI module interface that goes with that guitar. It's a rack model. So there's where it comes into complexity. There's only 2 rack modules that I know of in existence. And one's at the 5150 studio. It's still in the rack. So what happens is you hook that guitar up and you hook it up to almost like an Evitide rack. And what you do is you put that stereo Super Pluto.
It's specifically made for the Ripley. Is that what it is?
Yes. And see, Steve wouldn't.
Hey, Jay.
Steve didn't give me I was talking to Steve last year about this. It's like, hey, I want to build it. I said, hey, do you have any bodies? It's like, David, I'm not going to build that guitar again. It took me 1.5 years to build that thing. And 79 and 80, I think it was. And then he told me the modules. And I'm still talking to his wife and his daughter. To a point when I get time. I just haven't had time lately to reach out to them. But going back on technology, the guitars now have come a long way in technology. Think about this for a minute. In 1977, Eddie came out with that, guitar that had the humbucker in it, the Stratocaster. You didn't see any Stratocasters with humbuckers in the back bridge, And then all of a sudden, I saw the album cover. I discovered Van Halen in 82, I think it was 81, 82. And I saw the Van Halen 2 album with that black and yellow guitar. And I thought that was cool.
Wow.
That was a really cool.
That's what Caleb said. That exact same thing.
Because when that album came out, man, 'cause you had the first, you saw the white and black guitar, but it was really blurry, from the first Van Halen record. You remember, that it was kind of like blurry. So when you saw the back shot of the Van Halen 2 record, everybody was dreaming to get that type of guitar. They would, because see, that was like state of the art in 1979. Think about it, it had the original FRT3 on it, without the fine tuning lock nut at the top, and no fine tunings, because the FRT4 came out later, and it's early 80, I think, is when the FRT4 come out, because there's a picture of Eddie with the FRT4 on the Frankenstrat guitar. But I'm saying that guitar was state of the art. It was a humbucker, and it was dedicated, for that. And you'll see some live videos of '79 and of Eddie on tour with that guitar, and you're seeing him play it. But he stated a lot that he had problems with the tone of that guitar, the tone and everything. But I still think that was I think there's more details than just the tone. There's more. I've been hearing stories for years about the endorsement deals and stuff back in those days, because that was big back in those days. That's like having Michael Jordan signing with Nike at the first year, stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah, Nesdal, you probably know the history of. I was just looking at some of the Bumblebee stuff and looking through the Zlozauer book. It looks like he took the neck from the Van Halen 2 cover, the Charvel sort of neck with the black headstock.
That's the guitar. That's the neck it came with.
Right, and then he put it on the Frankenstein shortly after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also looks like he took, when he got the locking nut on the Bumblebee, he later took that locking nut headstock and put that on the Frankenstein for a short while.
Which is the one that you see on the Bumblebee reissue today.
Right. Yeah. Yes, with the stains on the headstock.
Yes, it's actually.
So it's amazing. It's kind of crazy what he went through all those changes.
It's actually a knot in the wood.
Mm-hmm. I think this is the Frank with the Bumblebee, with the Bumblebee headstock. I don't know. It's a good one there.
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. So I mean, he was just switching necks out left and right. I mean,
well, that neck stayed on that guitar until he broke it. He broke it. Jumping off a riser.
When they did is it the same neck on the reissues? The Frank reissue and the Bumblebee? No, it's not the same.
The neck that's on the Frankenstein reissue is a repro of the neck that was. It was actually on the Circles guitar.
Okay.
Then it was on the Rasta, which is the same guitar. It was on the Circles and Rasta. It was on the Frankie in 1981 for a little while. Then it went on to the I don't know where it went from there. But it went back on the Frankie after a while.
It's just crazy the necks that he went, especially just with the Frankie, the necks that he went through on that. I mean, how many different necks? 7 different necks probably that have been on that?
More than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we counted 14 at one point.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a bit. And also, Dennis, what are my thoughts on the new 5150 guitars? Those solid color ones. I think they're awesome. But
David, did you get a chance to see those?
The guy who saw them in person is right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw those. I saw them. Let's see, Thursday I had to work in the morning. I had to go to work, and I didn't leave work until like 2:00. So I got to NAMM show around 2:45 or so. And I saw postings on Facebook about the new, 5150 bodies with double humbuckers. And so I picked up the neck and wanted to compare it. And it's the same type of neck and everything, same feel. It just has another humbucker in the neck pocket area. And so I asked him about a CAD designs and, hey, what did you do? You same body, you just added a humbucker. And all they did was just copy and paste the humbucker from the bridge to the neck, and then just routed it. But yeah, it's the same balance and everything, not much more weight at all. But I mean, they're really the same guitar, just another humbucker, and it's all about marketing, really. You got to think about sales and marketing systems.
Do they have a single humbucker version?
Not
Did anyone-
without stripes, no.
Yeah.
Right. The 5150, the new 5150s, they don't have a single version.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Right.
I would
That's something I would think. Yeah, they would at some point come up with that.
It's all about marketing, you know, what they can believe that they can build and market to sell, because it's really simple, really, in a lot of ways.
That would appeal to. I mean, I guess the double humbucker would appeal to a bigger market.
Yeah, but you understand, you know, that they can build almost anything they want. They just got to figure out how they want to market it, or how do they want to distinguish between models, really. So. Because there's a price for every, you know, price overrun for every guitar that they have to make, you know, how much profit margins they make and how much it costs for each one to be manufactured. Then you have to add marketing cost into it. And, you know, so if you put out like 10,000 of these guitars, you know, at a set value, you have to put all that marketing involved in it. You know, it's just like any business perspective of any company, you know, but, I did play it, and, you know, there was like a couple different colors. I tried to take pictures, but man, there was like 1,000 people. Seemed like every time you walk around, there's always somebody bumping into you and stuff. But, I wanted to definitely, I wanted to get some really close up pictures, because you couldn't play the B replica. You couldn't play it. They had it all strapped down, locked down.
Yeah.
So you can pick it up and
saw
everything.
that.
Yeah.
I saw that. It had
A ring on the top of the head.
yeah, so it
Well,
couldn't be taken down.
I'm betting that one is Eddie's guitar. Like that's the prototype.
Well, no, that one.
Because it wasn't signed. It's not signed on the back. So I'm imagining it was Eddie's.
Well, did you see on Facebook who stuck a guitar pick onto it?
No.
It looks like that guitar might be Gerd's, because Gerd bought it. Made it look like Gerd bought that exact one.
Who's that? Gerd?
Gerd, yeah, he's the biggest Van Halen official like guitar collector out there. You know, like he's got like all actual, you know, all the PVs, all the music, you know, everything. Yeah. And the EVH stuff is like his biggest stuff. And he posted a picture on Instagram of that guitar, but it had a guitar pick. It had one of his picks stuck to it, and he's not there. So it made it look like that was.
I didn't see him. Yeah, I was looking for him, but I didn't see him today or this week. But yeah.
Okay, so Gerd, see, reserved. Okay, Nerd Halen is saying Gerd reserved one. Probably not that one though. Okay, that was a cool picture though, to have that guitar and have his pick on there.
Yeah, David, you got some pictures, right? Did you get some pictures?
Yeah, I got some
I
pictures.
don't know if Johnny wants to share some, or if you want to share some.
I sent some other day. I took some more today, but I couldn't get really in the back of the guitar because they had it locked down. Adam Reaver took a picture of the back because he talked to the builder.
We showed that.
Okay.
We showed that, yeah.
With the tone knob?
Yeah.
So you can't say who the builder is?
I didn't want to put people's names out there, you know. I try not to put single people's names out, really, due to contact information I have with people, you know. But there was two of them built. Let's just say that. At the moment.
You think that was photoshopped?
Nerd?
No, nerd. Nerd. Caleb. Let me see. Yeah, because I saw that. And what else?
What, the back cavity? Is that what you're talking about, or with the tone knob?
No. That's pretty interesting though.
I had never known that until, but I guess you guys researched that years ago, and Dave and Rob and that.
Yeah, with the tone knob.
Yeah, I'd never heard that until the other day.
Mm-hmm. And it
makes sense because he was always he was never satisfied with the sound of that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason why the tone knob is in there is because to cut off the highs with his wireless system,
right?
That he was using.
Yeah. Rob Johnson was saying that it was for a treble bleed, and you know that's a little bit of misinformation because a resistor and a capacitor takes care of treble bleed. not a knob. So that was just a mistake. So yeah, it's a tone knob, like a regular tone knob. It's just stuffed in the back.
Very interesting. I had never seen that or heard of that, but he always talked about how he had struggled with the sound of that guitar. And
I don't know how much of that is true. I think.
Well, in the well-known interviews he did, and he told stories in a lot of those interviews.
Right. I think a lot of that came from his dislike of Grover Jackson and Charvel after what they did to him and selling all those guitars. So it was like a bad taste in his mouth. And instead of saying all that stuff about them, he just said the guitar never worked out for him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then he met the Kramer guys on the airplane, and then they pretty much gave him market value for the company to come over to build whatever he wanted, from Kramer perspective back in the day. So he was able to control his whole system at the time because he owned percentage of the company.
Mm-hmm. I don't think this is photoshopped. I think this was actually taken. This is our friend Gerd. And that's the guitar, and that's his guitar pick on there.
I didn't see it today, the pick on it today, but also I could never figure out who won best show today. NAMM has a best show, like Chip won it last year for the
that's right,
for the 78 versions, and I didn't hear it because I went over I met Steve Warner today. He was over at debuting a new Gretsch guitar, and they had the area closed off. You couldn't really. From like 1:30 to 2:30 or like an hour, Steve Warner was there doing his press release for the PR perspectives, and they had all the PR people in the legal departments of part of the legal of Fender there to do the press release for the new Steve Warner Gretsch guitar, because Gretsch is tied with Fender and EVH, and you got the Jackson guitars, you got EVH, and then you get Gretsch. That's where I saw the Malcolm Young guitar last year. I got to play it. That was really cool to play a relic version of the Malcolm Young one. And and then I was talking to Steve Warner for a little bit, just like off the record, There's an interesting Van Halen story there too, from the 92 tour. You remember the old FUCK tour? Tour
you
rig.
can say it. That's fine.
Okay. His tour rig went to Eddie. Donated his whole tour rig to Steve Warner's son, his two sons. And he gave him the whole rig.
Wow.
Coming on a tractor trailer rig. I got pictures and everything, but it's pretty cool. All the striped cabinets from the PV stuff. Because Eddie would give, the story is Eddie would give away all these rigs every year because he would never. He just give them out to whoever his friends are, I'm talking about the whole, they got the whole rig system. I mean, all the cabinets and everything, the PAs, the H&H power amp systems and everything, go straight to the PA. Cause Eddie doesn't want to store that stuff anyway. And he works on the next continuation, it's easier. Why take everything back home to a point, if you have to store it and everything, and then he would just work on the next rig, for the Bounce tour or whatever tour, or because he streamlined in 98, he streamlined everything back down again. You remember he just had 3 cabinets on stage and 98. And then he put everything behind because most of all your power, all your amps are in the behind the scenes anyway, behind on
the live, the ones that are being mic'd and the ones that are live,
exactly. And then all the amps are back there under fans because they have to cool them down with the MOSFETs and stuff because all your transformers are burning hot, but that's just behind the scenes stuff. But I've got an idea on a patent I've been thinking about for a couple of years now. I've got somebody that's really thinking it's really cool, but what you need to do is almost like how you liquid cool a PC on a computer. You do the same thing for a tube amp transformer. You put the cooling systems around a transformer, but double insulate them, and then you can cool the transformer a lot quicker, more responsive. Then you wouldn't have any power bleeds off your transformers, your dual redundancy power systems on the transformer, because you can keep this primary and the secondary coils of the transformer cooler that way. Sorry, I didn't mean to get into the electrical part of it, but there's always ideas that I'm thinking, because here's one thing I learned years ago is a lot of the people that want to do the tube amps and stuff, they want to keep everything the same. They don't want really big changes, because why change something that's not broken? But you got to enhance it, because a tube amp, technically a tube amp has not really changed in 30 years really, except for like rectifiers and Misi Boogie's rectifier systems and stuff like that, and a few, because mostly all the Marshalls and the PVs and those were analog systems anyway. Now Fender has come out with digital circuitries in the sub panels of the sub preamps. They're all digital MOSFET control systems now. They have digital ones. That's why you can't run a Variac on all this newest systems that Fender has with the EL34s or the 6L6s. You got to make sure that you don't run a Variac to bring the voltage down or bring it up, because it's solid state components inside there. Not like the old PVs were all analog, and the Marshalls were analog. So it's
because it's a combination of digital and analog circuitry. So using a Variac would mess with the digital circuitry.
Yes, it actually puts more load on the circuitries, and you don't want to do that, because you don't want to lose your warranty, or affect your warranty really, because but most that's a dying art. Also, think about this though, tube amps, everybody you hear in the 80s, everybody in the late 80s and mid 80s was doing solid state. When I used to tour I used to use solid state, because I would have all my tube amps at home or in a studio, but I would never take out my main amps, because they're so fragile.
Yeah, what's more reliable on the road, a tube or
exactly? And I would use MOSFET power amps and stuff like that back in the old days, for miking and stuff, and amps and stuff. But I've always wondered, you can, MOSFET and then all your solid state circuitries have really changed in the last 20 years from components. Everything's gotten so much smaller, but I wonder what the tube amp's going to be like in another 20 years, if they're still going to be around, because tubes are starting to get harder to find, like your old Sylvania 6L6s, the old ones, man. I go to ham radio fests and stuff to find stuff.
Yeah.
Because, all your old ham radios are tubes, and that's, it's hard to find some of that stuff unless you can find it like overseas in Europe, because a lot of stuff still in the Soviet blocks are still using tubes to a point, but it's hard to find the old Sylvania stuff back in the first runs of the PVs were Sylvanias, tubes, and then they ran out of those, and then they started replacing those with other tubes, and that's why they, there was like 5 different versions of the 5150 PV versions, meaning of version controls of the first, second, and third, and fourth, and fifth releases of those, for the tube side. The circuitry is always the same. They may just add a capacitor or a choke or something in the amp to, do more gain or something. But the very first ones, the block letter ones, were using Sylvania tubes, the factory, before you retubed them. I
can imagine that technology is going to, as much as they can simulate it with digital and everything else, that will take over in the near future, I'm sure. And the simulations will be replacing the tube sound.
Yes. I was kind of thinking maybe somebody might come out with a digital transistor tube, meaning you can do a regular old type tube, but it wouldn't use the wire filament inside of it. It would actually use a transistor to a point, you would have the vacuum tube.
It's all about the resistance. It's about the resistance that the coil creates, or
Exactly.
inhibit, whatever you want to call it.
And I was thinking maybe if you had a tube with a gas in it but you'd have like a pitchometer on it, you could change by the screwdriver. You can adjust it that way. I don't know. I'm just thinking of different ways because see, eventually that's going to go away.
Yeah.
The tube amps will be sought after, like some of the old Strats and Les Pauls and stuff.
It's like the film industry where everything's gone digital with Hollywood now. There's very few directors that are shooting on actual film,
Yep.
Kodak kind of film. Everything's going to the 8K digital, and it's in some ways a lot inferior. That system where film has existed for 100+ years, and it's one of the the best ways to preserve an image. But digital is going to take over because it's easier, and it's the same with music industry too, where they from LPs to compact discs to analog cassettes and that sort of thing. You want to go with the cheaper version that's going to be better for the company, but not necessarily better for the consumer.
True. And you're chasing technology too. Like Eddie always talked about, he's chasing tone. A lot of companies are chasing technology because, Fender has a lot of different avenues of guitars and all the different perspectives of technology they want to use, like rolling, Korg, MIDI controllers and stuff. But there's like, actually I see like two different segments of market. You have some people that are highly technical that want to get into the MIDI side of the guitar, and then you have the other segment that everybody wants it all changed analog guitar. That's really what you have. Like, and then what I've been kind of thinking from a perspective is the next generation. Because we're growing older. We grew up in this area of music and analog systems and guitars and stuff. But what's the next generation? Because is it a dying art now? That's what I've been trying to figure out now, because the industries may not last to 20 years. Meaning some things. I'm really hoping that it will stay or build, because I just don't see how some of the companies can last if there's a segmented market, only a certain age field, and then the next generation is not catching on to it.
As long as those tubes become rarer and rarer and more expensive to get directly from the manufacturer, it's going to go right to the consumer. And a company like a boutique company that wants to make tube amps is going to have to charge 10 times, a couple of times more than they have to right now, because it's going to get scarcer and scarcer for that kind of product. The little, every piece that goes into that kind of an amplifier or so I mean, yeah, you're right. I think it's slowly going to be dying away and become such a niche market that it's going to cost so much for a tube that it's not going to be practical in any way.
And one thing I noticed at this NAMM show this year, a lot of your tube manufacturers were in, like your guitar amp manufacturers. Groove Tube was even there this year. Groove Tube usually was there all the time. I used to talk to Austin Pittman a lot, and I read his book. He wrote, I met Jim Marshall and Austin Pittman back in 2003 or 2004. And Austin signed his book. That's the Bible for me, the Austin Pittman tube amp book. It talks all about if you really want to build tube amps. Like when I was a kid, I used to be able to own tube amps and guitars and stuff when I was a kid, because when you read stories in 1980, 82 maybe, or 81, 82, that Eddie Van Halen built his own guitars. It's like, okay, if he could do it, I can do it. Right. So you get the Stuart McDonald magazine.
Well, we all did that.
And then you build them, and then exactly. And then I would go to Radio Shack back when Radio Shack was actually a electronic store. AK, not a cell phone store, but I'm saying you go back and you get resistors.
Does it still exist in your area? We've lost all our Radio Shacks.
We don't have anything that now, and so everything now is on mail order, or online now. And but I'm seeing back in those days, I was telling my brother about this a while back. I remember going to Radio Shack, and they, in the front building of the Radio Shack, had a tube tester. You would take your tubes down and you test your tubes, because this was back when everything was all still tubes, and it's amazing, because that whole area is gone now, only a segmented area, because not many things use tubes anymore, except maybe boutique amps. TVs used to use it, all your radios, everything. It's amazing the technology now that's obsoleted in one area, but a big domain in the other area,
Well, vintage electronics are huge nowadays. I mean, I guess there was a time, certainly in the 90s and stuff, where you could get them for pennies on the dollar, but it's gone up since then. I mean, just the vintage market for everything from old receivers to TVs to recording technology and all of that, amps and everything else. It's getting harder and harder to find, and just look online. I mean, I follow a few people who are repairing all those TVs, and it's just cool to watch those. An old RCA from the 60s or the 50s that they're going through the whole replacement of, and I don't know. I love that stuff. That's the early electronics kind of stuff with all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah. When do I get to talk?
You can talk anytime you want, man.
I'm just kidding.
Go for it. What do you got with? What do you got? You got your 5150 with you right now, Dave?
I've got everything with me, man. I've got everything. It's all here. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want, baby.
Well, if you want to show something, I'd love to see your 79 or 78.
My 78, the black and white.
Yeah, because I'm in the midst of. I just did some sanding on my my old Fender, and I'm in the midst of getting that up and running.
Oh, your Homer?
My Homer, yes.
All right, give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
You sanded that?
Yeah, it's a matte yellow right now, but here's the old pick guard, the Homer.
Wow.
I'm gonna buy I'll buy the paint this week probably, and get the first couple coats of black on there if I can.
Mm-hmm.
So Johnny, how you doing?
I'm good.
How's your second channel going? Is that you had a show today, didn't you? Talked a little about it. Not today?
No, I
maybe
haven't
last night.
anything
I got you.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Dave and I went live over there testing, because we're gonna have to move on from Hangouts,
Mm-hmm.
So we did some testing over there yesterday. That video is up, and yeah, I know I said one of the reasons for that channel is to do videos every day or something, Or,
yeah, your day-to-day vlogs and stuff like that. Your
all that stuff is moving over there. Yeah,
your car vlogs.
Just the random crap,
Well, it's going to be pretty soon. You'll be at your next Veda, right? That's coming up in a week or so, right?
Oh, it is. Oh, perfect timing. There we go. Hey, you guys. Yeah. Make sure subscribe to my second channel. Here it is. Right there. I think. Should be.
If Nightbutt's on the ball, there you go.
There it is. Everybody, subscribe to that channel. That's my second channel. That's where the vlogs will be. I actually might start swearing over there. So if you want to hear some F-bombs daily, there you go. Nerd Halen just subscribed. Thank you, Nerd Halen. I've only sworn on this channel like 3 times in 13 years. And the last time was at John BL for playing Nassau footage in the background.
Not exactly, but if I said something stupid, I apologize.
Nassau.
Again, Nassau.
You're celebrating too. You're wearing the shirt and everything.
Absolutely. I mean, God.
How come you're not wearing the helmet?
Yeah. Man. I could do. I was thinking of going live myself with the a whole thing about, you know, as they were doing some commentary as they're landing and stuff like that. I mean, I just like I said, I've been following it for the last few days. 50th anniversary. You know, it's the only chance I get. I mean, I wasn't alive in '69, so I didn't get to live through it. But
I wasn't either.
So I mean, you know, it's that's technology, and it's you know.
So what's the big fascinate? You like the moon?
I like the technology. I just like the technology that went into to getting man to the moon and back, and the '60s technology, the fact that they pushed it.
So that was real.
It was real, Johnny.
I always heard it was on a stage. It was
Stanley Kubrick directed it and all that.
You know, there's footage of it where you actually see like a guy in the background walk into frame and back up real quick. You haven't seen that?
No, I haven't seen that.
He's not wearing a helmet like the other two guys.
And a green screen. You know, well, I urge you to
a Coke.
Go to this guy has posted a website. I won't, you know, and it's got everything from. I was saying they actually have 30-track audio from 1969 that they recorded from everybody in mission control to the astronauts and as well as data. So they were recording.
Stereo? Is it mixed?
No, it's low. That's how they got away with it in 1969. It was low quality, you know, recording, very slow on 1-inch tape, and they had 30 tracks of everybody in mission control, and that's how they kept a record of it, and you can follow it. You know, the whole 9-day mission. Just look up real time Apollo, and that's what they've been showing. What I've been following for the last couple of days, with all the data, all the voice communication, as well as the data from, like, you know, the medical data from Neil Armstrong and all of that. You know? And
it's like 9 days of audio.
Yeah, you can scrub through I mean, you can actually like fast forward and back up through the whole mission anytime you want. It's good. You can select any channel of the 30 channels of audio and data that they have. Real-time photos, real-time video, and so right now, if it was 50 years ago today, it looks like they're probably in a couple hours getting ready to launch off the moon. They've done the walk, and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are back in the cabin, getting ready to launch and connect back with the mothership. So, and then they'll be on their way back home. So,
it's about time.
Yeah, and I know it's been 50 years. You know,
it's been 50 years, man.
There's no UFOs in the background of that either. You don't see any.
Just watch. You know,
anything weird fly by.
I always say follow the science. You know what I mean? I mean, thousands, you know, tens of thousands of people worked on that program. There's you know, hundreds of hours of footage, as well as audio commentary. If you think it was faked, just dig deeper, because it all happened, and it's kind of a disgrace if people really think that it was that it was faked.
Here we go. Now it's getting good.
Seriously, I'm serious. You know, if you can't take the time to follow it and to dig a little deeper, and it's all out there.
Well, I think
real deal.
I think the Kennedy assassination was faked too. I think that guy's still alive. That guy's still alive.
Hitler too.
That was a dummy. That was a dummy in that car.
That's a faux pas word.
And Elvis is still doing his
Elvis
thing.
is out there.
Elvis did not die on his bathroom.
Working at McDonald's.
No. Yeah.
Oh Lord. Because I didn't realize until all this came about a year ago. I was reading about Operation Paperclip. You know, the ones where they bring the.
You can't talk about that, Dave. You can't talk about that on here.
Werner von Braun.
Yeah, and Arthur Rudolph, you got to look him up. He's the one that invented the V5 Saturn rocket. Read about this guy.
Dog, right?
Yeah. Read about him, man. Wow. That just kind of shows you.
Go back to Robert Goddard. I mean, for crying out loud, the earliest, you know, rocket experiments, and that was the beginning of all of Apollo. You know, Robert Goddard and those early experiments with what was it, liquid fueled, then solid fueled rockets into the Saturn V, into the space shuttle, and all that.
Yep, exactly. Because now they're building the new rocket to go to the moon, and they're having all these major setbacks. But you got to understand, they haven't built a Saturn V rocket since 72. The last one they built.
The last one was Skylab. They sent it up with Skylab.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about it. Yeah. And then there's also a really good guy on YouTube, if you get a chance. He talks about Skylab. He was a scientist for NASA for years, and he talked about all the experiments they did for 2 years on Skylab. It's really interesting. So they talked about pharmaceutical systems back in this, early 70s. It's really interesting to read it. He talked about it was all classified and all the way up until the late 2000s. So.
Mm-hmm. But do you think if Elvis was really still out there, you think he'd still be wearing the sideburns and those bell
he'd
bottoms?
be incognito. He'd be as inconspicuous as possible, I would think.
No, I think he would be mixing in with the other Elvises.
That's what I'm. Well, okay, you could do that. That's
maybe he would
the
be
other way
wearing
to
the
go.
sideburns and the bell bottoms. And Jay, I told you you'd be in here, man. I told you. How come you're not? Jump in, dude.
So how old would Elvis be today? He's got to be in his 80s, right?
Older than dirt.
Yeah.
Well, he was roughly when he died.
He'd be like 80, about 80 years old. He'd be.
He was like 40 when he died, wasn't he? Like
he was 42
something?
when he died in 77, and that was how many years ago?
Over 40.
42 years ago.
Yeah,
so,
like
he
So he was 42, 40. So he'd be 84.
84.
Wow.
Yo, y'all's a bunch of crazy motherfuckers.
He'd be on his farewell tour right now.
He'd be working his cane now, and his handicap scooter.
Man.
With a little police thing on it. Secret Service. Secret Service thing.
Oh boy, Dave, what do you got with you right now? Let's check out that 78.
I have my Franny.
Nice.
Key. Yeah, it's a cool guitar. It's lightweight.
Like I said, I'm going to buy the paint this week. What kind of paint should I buy?
I would probably get
Duplicolor, or is that
Duplicolor Wimbledon white.
Okay.
Universal black. Those
Excellent.
would be the colors that you use. Yeah. Semi-gloss.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and put my first coat of black on this weekend.
Now I did a couple things to this guitar that was never on the original. I put a bone nut on mine because I think bone sounds much better than brass.
Mm-hmm.
I refretted mine. What else did I do to this? I put it's not a Fender bridge. That's a Callahan bridge with a big brass block on it. So it's a little bit different. Other than that, it's exactly the same thing. Same guitar.
I'm just noticing the kind of dirt spots on yours up on the upper the arm rest and on the bottom side there.
Bottom of the guitar, up here too.
I haven't necessarily noticed those before, but that's
it's all on there.
Yeah. Love it. The relicking.
Yeah, this is a cool guitar. This used to be Rob Johnson's. I took it from him.
And, what's the body and neck from? Is it Chris Lock?
I believe they're both Music Craft.
Okay.
This is before we knew Chris Lock. Yeah, I think this guitar originally came from Scott Smith. I think.
So when was that one built?
I don't know. It's, like I said, this is not one of mine. It's not one of my builds. But Rob Johnson and I trade guitars a lot, and he wanted an EVH GEAR version because he doesn't like this stock bridge. He likes Floyd Rose's. So I said, I get you one, but give me your guitar. And he said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But when he gave me this guitar, he forgot to tell me that there was some problems with it. Like there was a hump in the fretboard. I had to take the frets off and replane the neck, and put new frets on. And there was some problem with the original bridge that was on here. It just didn't fit correctly, so I had to get a bridge that fit correctly. But all in all, it's a very cool guitar, especially now that it's really working well. It's good. Really flamey neck. I don't know if you could see that, but it's a really flamey neck. It's got bird's eye on the fretboard, and the back is flamey. It's just a great feeling neck. Oh, the other thing is this is not the original one was like an R5. It was a 1 3/4 inch at the nut. This is 1 5/8 inch. So it's like playing a regular Fender. I have small hands, so this is much more comfortable to me.
Does it have string retainers on the top?
One. Yeah, like the original, just one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to do my whole. I got to do my
Gibson
homework.
logo.
I didn't want to put it. It had a Gibson logo on it. Rob had drew it in with a pencil and did a good job, but I didn't like it, so I took it off.
Oh,
Maybe eventually I'll put a real Gibson logo on it, but I don't really. He didn't always have that on there.
He put it on only because it had a Gibson pickup. Is that kind of why?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think he was just trying to screw with people, and because I guess no one had really seen a humbucker in a Strat, so he put that Gibson logo on there to see, for people to say, "Oh my God, Gibson came
Who's
out
going to
with a
notice?
Telecaster?" Yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
Paul Fuchs, yes, it makes sounds, but it's almost 2:00 in the morning here. I've got tenants. My fiance's sleeping. I'm not playing this late at night.
It's all good. So what else is going on tonight?
Steve Carmichael.
Yeah.
Hey,
Is Steve Anderson coming on or what? What's going on with him?
You're looking to be relieved?
No, I'm not looking.
You said you heard from him earlier, Johnny.
Well, yesterday we were live yesterday, and he said something. He hasn't written you back. Well, it's only 11 here, so I think if he was to jump in, it would be a little later.
He said 11:45 Eastern,
Which is what?
That's 2 hours ago.
Oh. Well, we weren't even on 2 hours ago.
He said he'd be ready.
Oh.
That's when he said he would be ready.
Oh, I sent him the thing.
I haven't seen him in the chat. So I don't know.
Oh, and also, Michael Smith says that he's stuck. He's stuck at work, and he wishes he could be here.
Oh.
Let's see. He said, "Please tell everyone that I'm sorry that I could not be on the show tonight. Believe me, I would rather be hanging with everyone on the show than doing this."
Yeah.
Whatever he's doing.
We miss you, Mike. We miss you.
And then he says he's with a dozen coworkers right now, and then he got caught watching us on his phone.
Uh-oh.
Somebody caught him. So he's in
it's got to be after hours. I mean, he can't be actually working on something now. It's got to be after hours for him. He's probably just exhausted.
Yeah, it's like 1 a.m. where he is.
Trains never stop.
Or 12 or
the boat never stops.
11, 12, 1. It's almost 1 where he is. Yeah, he's in Nebraska.
Johnny's old stomping ground.
Yeah. I stomped that ground right out, man.
Steve's going to come on at 2:00, is what Jay said. Jay, why don't you come on?
Right?
Jeez,
I knew Jay would be
in the chat. You're in the
I
chat.
knew Jay would be in the chat. I talked to Jay for like an hour last night, and he made it sound like, I love you, Jay. He made it sound like I wouldn't hear from him for like a week.
Yeah, that's what he told us. He told us that,
Is he got company coming over?
And I'm like, I betcha we'll see you in the chat. You guys, and then you guys will be jumping on here with your striped pants and everything. Oh, he's in bed. Ooh. Well, hurry up. Come on.
How's Joe Wentz? I haven't seen Joe Wentz in a long time. What's he up to now?
I'm sure he's working his rear end off.
I haven't seen him lately.
Yeah. He does this thing, and then he's been doing a lot of what he's always done, playing his cover songs and stuff. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see him on. I jump into his chat from time to time. You know. But yeah, he hasn't been over here for a long time though.
Okay. Like I say, I'm on Facebook every now and then, looking at different blogs and stuff. I need to reach out to Chris Hubbard to ask him about the string retainers. I bought some more from him, so I got to find out when they get shipped out. I think they started shipping out last week. I'm not sure, but I bought some more of those.
How many do you need? How many 5150 guitars do you have?
I got like 12 here somewhere, maybe
12 5150 guitars.
Yeah, I got different ones. I got the brand new ones all the way to the 7 tuners and stuff like that. I got bodies. I got like about 8 bodies here ready to be painted for more stuff later. And then the CAD machine is actually in the garage right now. The old Chris Locke's machine. I've got that one. It's in the garage right now working.
Oh, man. That's right.
Yep,
that's right.
And, I just don't have. I started a company last year, and then that turned into more work than I anticipated because I got a Bridgeport in-mill and stuff here, so I can make stuff now. I just don't have much time anymore, so not much free time. But I've got I bought a body from Chris like 2 years ago, and I got to put it. It's the Bumblebee body and neck. I just got to put it together and paint it one day. So.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the bridge for it because I found a bridge in Japan years ago, and I bought it, and I just got to relic it, soak it in some vinegar and stuff to make it look really old.
Mm-hmm. Good night, Jay. Good night, Jay. Jay's going to bed.
Good night,
Hey, Jay.
Everybody, follow Jay over on Instagram. There we go. There's Jay's Instagram right there. I think. There it is. Everybody, follow Jay on Instagram. There he is. And what? You're going to show David that guitar?
Oh, he has like 5 of these.
2 trench trims and a 12 string right now. And I got another one I've got tore apart. But yeah, those things are awesome.
This one's a Jeff Babbitt's restored one.
Okay.
It's 84, I believe.
Okay. I talked to him a couple of months ago about a trans tremolo part. Christopher Locke's got my trans tremolo right now. Because we made these bodies a couple months ago. These are the Wolfgang trans tremolos.
Oh, wow. Jesus Christ, you have all that shit in your bedroom?
No, I mean, this is on, I've got like 2 of these already, and then I've got a couple Wolfgang bodies. But
look at that.
That's
in bed. Ooh.
And it's got the adjustment on for the bottom trans tremolo and stuff. And then also,
wow.
I'm working on getting the
stuff Dana.
I'm working on PV stuff to get some of their old stock inventory. I'm working on that right now. I should have the deal closed Monday. I got to wire transfer some money to them. So I'm looking at getting some necks and some bodies. So from PV.
Let me guess, you're going to get one of the acrylic bodies, aren't you?
Trying that, and also some flat top flame tops. They were for Eddie, and that's all I want to say right now. So I'm working on getting those. The deal has not been finished yet, but I'm working on that now. There's so the HP2s, if anybody knows about it, you remember a couple of years ago, HP2s were released by PV. It was the old stock Wolfgangs from years ago, and 20-year-old bodies and necks and stuff. And then they have to deplete their inventory now, and we're getting ready to that doesn't exist now until they put another operation together, but they don't know if they want to do another operation because they have to they wanted to get rid of all the HP2s at the NAMM show yesterday and today. I saw there's only 2 left that I saw that they have assembled. One was a blue one and one was an amber, yellow amber one, like the first year models.
It's a shame that they're not as good as the old ones. They're just not as good. Nothing about them, actually.
And the bodies are all these bodies were cut 20 years ago, they haven't cut a body in 20 years because all that stuff is old material. You just have to see. Peavy did a lot of adjustments and wear in because those guitars were almost like a Music Man. The necks were like when you played one, it felt like it's been played for 5 years. The old Music Mans. That's why I keep all the old Peavy Wolfgangs. Man, I love those guitars because they were so well balanced and arch tops. They were state of the art at the time. From that perspective, it's like the Steinbergs. Steinbergs were state of the art guitars. Man, those things. I saw Geddy Lee play a bass in '84 on the Grace Under Pressure tour, and those things were $2,000 then in '84. And then you saw Eddie in '86 with a trans tremlos and stuff. He had a black one at for a couple of years. No, what was it? '88 he had it, or '86?
80. Didn't he get one in '84? He had one. There's photographs of him in '84 with.
And then
he got his in '82. He just didn't use it on a record until '86.
Then '86 is when he toured with it, and then because it was a black pick guard. I mean, the black faceplate.
He had 2 of them. He had.
Then Babbitt's painted the other faceplate because he had 2 of them, and then he has the 12 string also, and the 12 strings are ultra rare for the bridge perspectives.
The one that says 0812 on it.
Yeah, that one. See, if you look at that bridge, the bridge is so different because it's a non-tremolo bridge, but the tremolo, I've got it tore down right now because I got the faceplate off of it. But what it is, you have to move, you pull it out and you slide it down and you tune each string individually. And it's a cool bridge. I can't remember the name of it. I was talking to a Headless Guitar Company last year about it. And they're like, oh, Lord, we really want that guitar. And then they had one on eBay a while back later. They had one come out, a white one. And then there were like 4 colors of the Steinbergs at the time. They had a black one, a white one, a red one, and a blue one. And the red ones are hard to find, and ultra rare is the blue ones.
They have both of those at Headless USA.
Yeah. And Jeff and Don have the biggest collection that I've seen ever, of the Steinbergs.
Over 200 of them at his place.
Mm-hmm.
There's Ed, 84 Rolling Stone with him, with the Steinberger behind him.
And those have stainless steel frets in them. And those were really revolutionary back in those days, stainless steel frets then.
I always thought that was a bass, John.
It could be. I
always thought that was just a Steinberger bass back there.
Because he had a bass. You remember?
In '84, you would see a picture of him playing a Steinberger bass.
With the Simmons drums that Alex had the red Simmons drums behind him back there too. Because at the studio,
my eyes aren't good enough. I can't see well enough to see.
At that studio, it's really hard to record drums because it's a rectangle building at the time, a racquetball court. Oh Lord, I think it has so much reverberation in that thing when they first built that studio. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, the legend is that they recorded the cymbals separate, which I still don't necessarily believe all that, but
But you believe the moon landing, though.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Fruitcake Tony asks if I have any acoustics that I favor or if I'm into any hollow-bodied stuff. I don't have any hollow bodies at the moment. I do have a Martin D45 that stays in its case. I don't really show that on social media either. A couple guitars I just don't pull out to show.
Yeah,
but if it had stripes, though, you would.
No, it's got beautiful stripes on it. It's just beautiful rosewood on the back, stripy rosewood.
Oh, I did hear this today. This is really interesting. They're starting to put RDF tags in some of the guitars now. The acoustic guitars going overseas because of the rosewood and ebony. So they have to track the guitar when it leaves America, when it goes to overseas and it comes back, and they're using RDF tags inside. They're actually putting them up under the fretboard now, Martin is, so they can track them. Because, you know, there's a major issue going on now with
Imported rosewood.
Imported rosewood, and you have to prove the guitar left United States at this, you know, time venture. So they're using that as a tracking device now. I heard that today. That was actually really interesting. I never heard that until now.
But what's Instaham?
I don't know.
What is that?
Fruitcake Tony. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what was the poon landing?
Moon landing. That's a lampoon landing.
Lampoon.
Fruitcake Tony. I don't know if Ed played a Steinberger bass on Hagar's record. I thought he played a Kramer Spectre bass on that.
I think in the the photo shoot for Guitar Player, he's playing the Spectre. Maybe in the interview for that, he says what he uses, and I'm thinking he did use a Steinberger bass for that.
Yeah,
Probably the one that was in that photo. If it's a bass, yeah. I mean,
Where's that magazine? Who has that magazine?
Oh, the Guitar Player.
The Guitar Player, October '87, with Van Halen and
Steve
Hagar
Anderson's
on the front.
probably got it. Where's Steve Anderson?
Well,
yeah, it's after 2.
I have it. Let me see if I can find it, if it matters.
He-
Leave a
Crawl
thumbs up.
Crawl
Leave
up
a
in the
thumbs up.
attic there.
Leave a thumbs up if you want me to find it, and subscribe to my other channel as well, please.
Yes.
Anyone interested in how to buy a VCR? Talking about tech. If you want to buy a new VCR in 1984, this is how to do it.
Do they make VHS tapes anymore?
I think they do. I'm sure you can buy a VHS tape somewhere.
Trying to find a Betamax, man. You can't find a Betamax machine anywhere in the world anymore. It's like a laser disc.
That's funny. This is all about 1984 tech. How to buy Hot Electronics, the stars of stereos for the road.
How to buy stolen electronics?
No.
Podcast.
Hey, don't forget to follow Johnny Beane on everything. Instagram, Johnny Beane Live on YouTube, Johnny Beane's second channel.
Yeah.
What was
Twitter.
in the-
I'm on Twitter, you guys.
Twitter?
Twatter?
I'm on Twitter.
What do you think the number one album in 1984? Sometime, what is it, July?
Thriller.
June of 1984 was. What was
Thriller.
the number one album?
Synchronicity.
Let's see.
Thriller.
No, Synchronicity was well off the charts at that point.
Well, then it was.
Although, wait a minute. No, The Police, it was on the charts. It was number 48.
It was Thriller. It was Thriller, and then 1984, Van Halen.
In '84.
84. Come on.
Thriller came out in
Thriller
82.
Thriller was probably still on there.
Okay, it would have been Purple Rain.
That was not 84, though.
Michael Jackson Thriller was number 5. I mean, geez. Number 5 in the charts of 1984. That's amazing.
Read us down.
Because the album...
Read us from 5 to 2 and see if we can guess one.
All right, so number 5 was Thriller. Number 2 was Culture Club.
How about 3? Or 4?
3 was the Cars, Heartbeat City.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2, Huey Lewis and the News Sports.
Oh,
Number 1 was a soundtrack. What was the soundtrack?
Flashback. Flashback.
In '84.
You were very close. What is it? Not Flashback, David.
How about
Begins with an F.
Footloose.
Footloose?
Yes. Footloose. And Van Halen 84 was number 7 in the charts.
Actually,
on June of '84.
Because that was 6 months, right? Because it debuted. The album came out January 1st. You know.
Yeah. For the record, I meant Flash Dance, not Flashback.
Footloose. Flashback. Footloose.
Flashdance was 83.
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't see Flashdance on there. Interesting, you know. I mean, it was all rock back then. I mean, Billy Idol, Billy Joel, Lionel Richie, Rush,
Mad Dog. There you go. Well, not that one. Let's talk about this for a second. I watched. There's a new trailer for a new Top Gun movie coming out.
Yes, I've seen that.
Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think about that? I mean,
is it Tom Cruise? Tom Cruise.
I think it's all the original. It's all the original guys.
It's Tom Cruise,
Kelly McGillis, and
No, she's not there. No. No.
That's the wrong gender anyway for her.
Yeah, I did say guys.
Okay.
Is it Kenny McGillis now?
Oh,
I don't know, man.
you guys, come on.
Oh, what, did she change genders?
I don't know if that is that
she's
what
attracted
you're saying?
to the other gender now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think she's a nurse in real life or something.
Is she a nurse, Halen?
Oh my God,
Nurse Halen.
Nurse Halen.
talk to me, Goose.
No, there's nothing wrong with any of that, you guys. But yeah, I saw people are saying in the comments of the trailers of the new Top Gun, they're like, "You guys better have Kenny Loggins and Berlin on the soundtrack, otherwise nobody's gonna care." You know?
I will say, if Tom Cruise is producing it, if he's part of it, it will be quality.
It seems like he's the one. It's like his movie is what it's, because he was on Conan O'Brien talking about it. I think I saw a clip last night him talking about it, and it seems like it's the entire thing is him. I think Paramount is putting it out, but I think it's also.
I'm sure he's put a lot of his money and his backing into it. You know, that's Cruise's kind of thing. You know, and he makes great movies. I will say, Tom Cruise makes great movies. Mission Impossible, all that stuff.
But it's like 10 years or 12 years too late. I'm seeing it's way too late unless you're going after that market of the original people that watched the movie. You know, because they're probably in their late 40s and 50s now, right?
So I saw it in the theaters, 86, I think it was, 86, 87.
So they waited probably 20 years too late, in my opinion. I mean, they can come out with it, but it
20
probably
years, 30 years.
30.
Well,
okay.
yeah, if they wanted to make a sequel right away, I mean, geez, yeah.
Hell, the airplane doesn't even exist anymore. The F-14s have been grounded for years, you know. Those things were.
I know, and somebody, you know, Tom Cruise's age, who's, you know, pushing 60, I would guess, or late 50s, something like that.
He's pushing 60, but he looks like he's 40.
Well, yeah.
If you look at the somebody left a comment on the trailer that I saw last night. Who's the other guy? Not
was
him. Val Kilmer?
Wasn't it
Val Kilmer?
Val Kilmer, yeah.
Not Val Kilmer. What's the dude?
Yeah, I know who you.
He's in the trailer. And he was Tom Cruise's age
Goose,
now,
right?
back in the day. What's the guy's name?
Oh, is it
Ed?
a new guy?
Is it Ed something? He's an actor. Somebody knows.
You think?
Somebody knows. Who's the guy? You guys know him.
Well, I know there was a couple, you know, people who were famous from that movie. It was Val Kilmer, Tom Cruise, and then the other guy, not Daniel Stern.
There we go. Ed Harris. There it is.
Ed Harris.
Thank you.
Oh, Ed Harris. Yeah.
In the trailer. In this trailer, Ed Harris was Cruise's age then, but and Cruise is now his age now. And somebody in the comments said Cruise looks like he's 40, and Ed Harris looks like he's 140.
Yeah.
You know,
those guys are got to be about the same age.
No,
come on.
They might be. No, they're like maybe they're 10 years apart. But
you know what's the
Tom
black guy?
Skerritt? Were you talking about Tom Skerritt or
no? Not Tom Skerritt. No.
What was the black guy's name? He also played Trevette on Walker, Texas Ranger, and he also played one of the bad guys on Die Hard.
I haven't seen either of those.
Well, fine then.
Let me see when Ed Harris was.
Yeah, Ed Harris. He landed on the moon, didn't he?
Yeah, he was on Apollo 13. Ed Harris is younger than Tom Cruise. No, wait a minute.
No.
Ed Harris was born in 50. Tom Cruise was born in 62. So, all right, makes sense. They're
10 years apart.
10 years apart.
Look at the trailer, though. I don't know if Ed Harris has a bunch of makeup on. The guy looks like he's 30 years older than Cruise.
Well,
and the other one was Anthony Edwards was the other guy that was in there.
That's right. Anthony Edwards.
Meg Ryan was his wife in that movie, remember?
Oh, that's right. I think that was one of her first roles, too.
Mm-hmm. And she's dropped off the she's married to John Mellencamp now, right? John Cougar Mellencamp?
I don't
really?
I think they are, or they're dating or married or something.
Yeah. I know she's retired, though. She hasn't acted at all anymore.
She couldn't act when she was.
Oh.
No, I've seen Die
Meg
Hard,
Ryan,
of course,
married to Dennis Quaid.
No, they divorced years ago.
They divorced after Inner Space.
2001.
Inner Space was their big movie.
Yeah. I was looking up all the.
Yeah, poor Meg. Yeah, she's.
Val Kilmer, he had throat cancer at one time. I think he recovered finally, but he was having bronchitis issues, and then it turned into cancer in his throat at one time.
Oh, jeez.
You have to read about him.
He's been out of the spotlight for a good almost 20 years, I would think.
Because he had one of those devices that they hook up, for breathing.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what they call it.
The trach.
Yeah. And he used to wear scarves all the time because of the bronchial device that he was breathing off of.
That's terrible. That's terrible. Terrible. Johnny's gone.
Johnny's gone.
Johnny's gone. Johnny is definitely gone.
Get you. Yeah, Nerd Halen. What are you talking about?
John Stockwell was in that movie. He played Cougar. You remember him? He was in a lot of movies back in the early 80s. My Science Project, some other ones. He turned into be a director. He started directing a lot of movies in the 2000s and stuff. But he played Cougar.
John Stockwell, yeah. Born in 61.
And Tim Robbins was in it. He played Merlin. I forgot he was in that movie, way before Shawshank.
Yep. As Lieutenant J.G. Sam, Merlin Wells. Yeah, I'm going to have to watch that again. It was a great movie back in the day. I don't know how well it holds up these days. But I'd check out the new one. I think Tom Cruise, as much as I don't, the whole Scientology and all his... He's kind of a diva, when it comes to Hollywood. But I enjoy watching. The Mission Impossible movies were great.
Well, the thing is, he's a great actor. He's a great actor. Yeah. Great entertainer. Mm-hmm. I don't care what his personal life.
Absolutely, yeah. That's all that counts. That's all. And
I gotta mention this also. I have a buddy who I spoke to today, who called me and said. And I'm not going to be very political. I'm not, but it has to do with politics. He had a friend of his that he's had for a long time, and because his political views wasn't the same as my buddy's, my buddy unfriended him, and he told me about it. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Who cares what someone's political views are? This is a friend of yours that for a long time, and why? Isn't friendship more important than someone's political views? Who cares?
Yeah, just don't talk
politics. It doesn't matter. Well, no, my friend is a very political. He talks politics all the time, and I don't. I refuse to. And every time he tries to, I'm like, I almost said his name. I'm not that guy. You want to play guitar? You want to talk guitars? You want to talk motorcycles? I'm your guy. If you're going to talk politics, I'm just going to walk away because it's just not. It's not. I don't want to. I don't want to have nothing to do with it.
Doesn't interest me. It doesn't interest me anyway.
It's no one's business what my political views are, and it shouldn't be anyone's business what yours is, and that's the way it should be. And yeah, I was like, people unfriend their friends all day on Facebook. If God forbid you're a Trump follower or a blah 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 follower, or you smell people's asses for a living. I don't know. It's people are stupid. They're crazy. People are crazy. Like, give me a break, dude. You've been friends. Oh, I'm gonna divorce my wife because she doesn't believe in what I believe in politically. Are you insane? That's
it's not
crazy.
worth the headache.
It's crazy.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, leave it out of the. You don't have to talk about it.
Who cares? God, unfortunately, there's nothing we as a society or as individuals, as a society, yes, there's nothing that us individuals can do about politics anyway. And people that are running the countries, we're just a little guy. I don't care what anyone says. We're just a little guy. No one's listening to us.
I'd rather just talk about guitars.
That's right.
Change the subject. Let's talk about guitars.
Absolutely. I've got a Steinberger in my hand. Steinberger.
Nice.
No cheese.
What year is that? You said it was like an 80.
Like 84. 84. The serial number is 5174.
Ooh, so close.
Yeah.
Man, what if you got the 5150? Who's got the 5150?
Oh, who knows? Who knows if it's even one of these? It could be. It could be. A Strat-bodied one, an ML.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to have this. 4-digit number. Awesome.
Yeah, we want to, and Steve Anderson, we want to see if he got the he's looking for the new EVH 5150, the lowest serial number he can get. Somebody in the chat was saying, I think last night was saying they got
17.
Yeah, a low number, something like 17 or something like that.
Yeah, 17, I think.
Cool. David, you still with us?
Yeah, sure am.
It's fading fast.
I got to look at my Steinbergs and look at my numbers because I know it's a low number, but I just never. It's always been in the Steinberg cases. I've got them, and I think what I heard was, and I don't know, I talked to Don about this. We talked last year, back in November, December, I think it was maybe November, about the 12-string. He's like, dude, they only made like 20 of those things in the world ever. And I was like, really? Are you serious? He said, yeah, because that bridge is so rare for that 12-string. They made like, I think 18 or 20. I'll get his confirmation in email. It's in an email somewhere I've got. And then they made, I think, 1,500 of the Trans Trim GL T2s, I think. I got the list. He gave me the database list of that of last year. They made more of the M series than they ever did the GL series, because the GL series were the first ones. And I got to meet Ned Steinberg years ago. He was a great guy to talk to. Him and I met with all these different people at NAMM back in the old days. Got to meet with Tom Anderson and Ned Steinberger. They were all groups of friends with each other back in the day. So you get to meet all these different people and hear the stories back in the day of stuff. And back in those days, I had to carry around one of those little handheld recorders, the little audio recorders like, lawyers use and stuff. Because, you couldn't use your phone back in those days to transcribe all your information, because you had to record it and go back and take the, like a reporter would do, you would type all this stuff out after you listen to the audio. Mm-hmm. It's great history because Henry was around. He spun off Kramer years ago. You remember he came out with those guitars that had aluminum necks on them. I talked to Henry the other day in Facebook if he had any more stock of that. He doesn't, but
I'm looking right now. There's a great website, Steinberger World. It's got history, news, every instrument. I'm just looking through that right now. It's got
Ed.
Just a great place to.
What was the guy in Las Vegas?
Ed Roman.
Ed Roman. They used to be he bought. Now, he told me this years ago at NAMM show. He bought all their Steinberg stuff when they shut down. He went in and bought everything before Gibson came in. And then Gibson got the last part. But he went in and bought a whole bunch of supplies. For years, that's where you got all your parts from your necks and your bodies and then your faceplates. But I called them because that's the first person I reached out to that in Headless last year about the GL4T faceplate with the 12 string, and they said they only made like 20 of those guitars to begin with. So good luck ever finding a 12 string version, and the 12 string version is different. So I'll show you. If Dave shows his Steinberg, there's a
12 string bridge right there.
Yeah. And then the faceplate is differently made. It's totally at the back. It's completely square to back. There it is. That's the bridge. And it's really ingenious how they invented that thing. That's more complex really than a trans tremolo on how you do the string.
It is pretty intricate.
Yeah.
I mean, every string has its own sort of saddle adjustment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12.
And they have springs on each one of them. When I took it apart, it's like, oh Lord, I'm never going to put this thing back together. And then it took me 2 hours taking the pictures and reverse engineering how to put it back together. And finally I got it back together, and I talked to Don about getting the faceplate, because if you buy a GL2T or a GL4T trans tremolo, it won't fit because the 12 string is wider. You see that bridge is wider than a trans trim.
Well, it would have to be because it's got 12 strings on it.
Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit wider, and then the back of the faceplate is not an L shape. Like if you see the trans tremolo faceplates, they've got an L shape in them. These are flat all the way across the back. I got CAD designs that shows the trans trims with humbuckers in them, and then versus the single coil and then humbuckers. So it's different. The Steinberg stuff is starting to hard to get to because it's so expensive now. You know, these things are running $4,000 or $5,000 now. If you're lucky to find one under $4,000, you're very lucky. You know, without a lot of major work to do to it. But I mean,
interesting. Yeah.
And also Ned talked about why he never came out with a 5-string GL bass, you know, back in 78 when he was making them. You know, I didn't realize it, but he was a furniture designer. He was not a guitar builder. He started building furniture, and that's where he got his start from. He talks about this in a YouTube video sometime. You watch it. It's about an hour long. He talks about his whole history. He's like, I built high-end furniture. And he got commissioned. He was having a slow month or something. He got commissioned by this bass player to build a guitar. And then he built one out of wood. And he's like, well, let's try to use carbon fiber systems, you know, like composite materials. And he revolutionary the whole instrument making then, because you know, Parker Fly, you remember the Parker Flies? I've got 3 of those here, and those are carbon fiber, man. Those things are awesome guitars. You don't see them anymore. The company doesn't even exist anymore, you know.
Is that true?
I have a good buddy of mine who has a whole bunch of those. That's all he plays.
I love those things. And you could do MIDI controllers out of them. Also, you could do dual channel. You can do piezo as a clean channel and distortion on the other channel. So you can do AB switchbox channel switching on those things. It's really cool. But it was state of the art. It was a revolutionary guitar back in the 2000s, but the company doesn't even exist anymore. You know, so it just. You know, they had a market niche. That's what they worked on, and they were experts at it. But they didn't, you know, nothing got expanded long term. You know, that's why I think they just didn't.
I just don't think they took off. People didn't like them. I think they were too light. You know, I think
the pros loved them for, you know, from 84 through, through the 80s.
Pros?
A lot of people.
Couple people.
Well, you know, a lot of the biggest band, you know, like Genesis and that kind of stuff, they all played the headless trans-trem models.
I thought you were talking about the Parker Fly.
Oh, the Parkers.
That's
yeah,
right.
It didn't. I don't know.
It didn't
catch on as much. You're right.
You know, I owned one myself, and it was like a 4-pound guitar. And as far as I'm concerned, there comes a time when a guitar is too light, and that's too light. Mm-hmm. The neck was almost non-existent. It's so thin, and it's thinner than any Ibanez I've ever played.
That's why it's called the Fly.
And just that top horn is very hard. Being a big guy, the strap button is behind the horn, and the horn is a little funny looking, and it sticks right into your tummy. It's not a comfortable guitar to play. You have to be a stick figure to play it, really. It's I can see how some people might like it, but it's really not a great guitar, in my opinion. I'm sorry, it's expensive. They were all super expensive. I think the cheapest one was $2,000 when they first started making them. The ones out of carbon fiber. I think they made some out of wood too.
Yeah, a few of them out of mahogany and ash and stuff later, but the first ones were all carbon fiber.
They were all carbon fiber, and they were all really expensive, like $3,000 plus. Like I said, the cheapest ones were like $2,000, and it just to me it wasn't there. And this is actually the second Steinberger, it's the third. This is the third Steinberger I've ever played in my life. First one didn't have a trans trem. It was a GL2, and it was used, and I loved it. My buddy owned a music store. He now works with the guys at the Music Zoo, but he owned his own store, and he had one, and it's got to be, I'm saying maybe 1997 or 98 he had the guitar. And I loved it. And then he was selling it used for $3,500 without a trans trem on it. And I remember that because I wanted to buy it so bad. I went to a store every other day to play that guitar, and I tried to buy it. Back then, who had the money to do that? It's like I was buying a lot of guitars, but I wasn't buying expensive guitars back then. I just wasn't. Not that expensive anyway. The most expensive guitar I'd bought, and at that point was a PV Wolfgang for $1,700. But I couldn't think of spending $3,500 on a guitar back then. Just couldn't do it. But anyway, that one then recently Rob's striped GL2T, and then because of that guitar, that made me want to get this. And I haven't looked back. It's amazing. What an amazing guitar. And the guys at Headless, Don at Headless, he is such a super nice guy. With this guitar, I got the hard case, the soft case, 2 packs of D'Addario double ball strings for it. Everything that you could possibly need for the guitar, and and his home number in case anything I have any questions. It's who gives you the CEO of a company that gives you their home number because you buy a guitar from them. That's great service.
Sure.
Exactly.
And it wasn't salmon pink either.
Yeah, wasn't salmon pink, and it's not striped.
How many colors did they offer at the beginning? Just black and white, or
the black, white, red, and blue?
Okay.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. Did you know though that some Dave dude has a dinosaur bone nut, and they're gonna make millions off that?
Oh,
wow.
Cool.
Did you know
dinosaur bone nut? That's amazing.
From real dinosaur.
Wow. Like a guitar nut or like one of 2 nuts?
What?
What?
Tony.
Dinosaur bone nut. Well, it could
Thank you, Tony.
Interpret that as you will.
Well, that's what you call real relic.
It's 65 million years old. From petrified wood. Petrified. Let's make a guitar out of a petrified piece of wood. That'd be interesting.
And like Dave said, I met. I've run into Jeff Babbitt's years ago, probably at the NAMM show. Didn't know at the time, the interactions with him, and then years later, maybe about 5 years ago, I was looking for a faceplate for the GLT2 Elite because those faceplates are so rare to begin with anyway. And he was like, you got to be patient. We're going to make the GLT2 faceplates. That was, 5 years ago. So about 3 years ago, they finally came out with them. It took them 2 years to build it. And so I gave them CAD files and designs and everything. And I would work with Jeff and Don on the faceplates and everything. And they finally came out with it. And then in part of the first ones that they made, they did some special stuff because we spent 2 years building this damn thing, so it was a lot of effort to get it made, because they're really close to the original one. And then what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to use the same company in Houston to make the GL4T version faceplate, because it's got single coil, and a humbucker in the back. And the pickups on these things are very expensive too, because it's active electronics EMGs. And if you could find the pickups for them, good luck finding them, because they're unless you talk to Jeff or Don, because those are hard to get anyway.
Are you sure about that? I mean, you can get an 85 and an 81, I think. You can't get the ones that look like vintage ones.
Right, well,
they look a little different, but it's the same pickup.
If you want to go back to 100% accuracy, you have to. It's a little harder to find unless you can find a whole faceplate, because some people will sell the faceplates with the original pickups in them.
Well, that's what they do. That's what they're doing. That's what Don
Yeah.
and Jeff are doing. They're
Yeah.
and Tony. Yeah, I'm keeping this one black, but you never know. There might be a striped faceplate coming soon. You never know.
Oh, yeah. And
you never know. And it may be super original, like
Yep.
the original one was. Exactly
Yep.
like exactly like the original one was. You never know.
Yep. And they're really good to work with, because when I worked with Jeff, he did some special stuff for this one, and I just never shared the information out, because I don't want to cause contacts that any issues, because you post. I don't want to post things and show pictures of things that I tried to make personal relationships with, and that could affect that later on. So I have to be careful of what I post sometimes on things. So, but yeah, it's cool. The faceplates are really cool. Those have Allen wrenches. You have to use an Allen wrench for it. There's like 6 bolts, 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom. Take the faceplate off, and then you'll see the shell. You'll see Jeff Babbitt's. He refurbished the original one per Eddie and Wolfgang's request years ago, and you saw that. So, but
yeah, he had a whole the whole process of dismantling it and refurbishing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you put the original pickups back in it and stuff, stuff like that. But it was really interesting to see that, And
what I'm surprised at is that Eddie was actually cool with that getting out.
Yeah, I thought
I figured he'd lose his mind over that.
It's almost like that era. He's kind of buried that era for a little while.
Yeah.
From 5150 and through the Sammy years, he doesn't promote that as much as the other stuff now.
I heard a different story about all this, but I can't talk about it at the moment. But it's really interesting from that side. But it's really interesting, like you say, about getting released out, because you have to be careful, because certain things will be locked away from an aspect of, hey, so and so did this or something, and then it gets back to certain people, and it hurts business perspectives in the future. That's what I'm saying. So, but it's really interesting that Jeff did that, because that's a lot of work. He had to redo the frets and everything on that guitar.
Apparently, he does that. He does that to every guitar he rebuilds. The frets, everything. It's like a $3,600 type of deal.
Because he goes through the whole thing and makes it turns it brand new again. And that's an effort of love too, not just as a job, but it's an effort of love there, because these tremolo's are very complex when you set them all up for the intonation. It took me a month to figure out back in the 90s when I bought my first, that one that I've got, the Elite version. It took me a month to figure out how to intonate the dang thing, because I'm using a strobe tuner, Peterson strobe tuner, trying to intonate it. And it's like, how do you adjust the intonation on these things, And back in those days, you didn't have the information like you do now on internet. You had to get I had to send information back to Steinberg was still in existence then, and I sent paperwork and asked them, hey, can you send me the book? And they sent me a big catalog of how to set it up, and it's pretty good. I still got it. It's a written form.
There's how he ended up getting the Steinberger before he refurbished it.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of beat. Yeah, different pickups, everything. Yeah.
Well, those are Wolfgang pickups. PV Wolfgang pickups.
Did he use that on the 04 tour? He must have used it on
No.
What was the last 80 or 88 was the last time he used it, or
that guitar? I mean, it could be anywhere 88, 89, within that
so
tour.
80s. Yeah.
Because in 90 when they opened up Cabo Wabo, he used a black one, an all black one.
There's the faceplate and taken off.
Yep, and also you got to worry about the 9-volt battery in the back getting corroded. That's another thing that happens to these things. The batteries will start leaking acid, and they'll corrode like crazy in the very back. That's one thing I hate about some of these guitars that, like the Ripleys, have the 2 9-volt batteries. You got to be worried about the acid leaking out of the batteries after so many years, and causing major.
The easy fix is to just change them every 4 or 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Or just leave it. If you're not going to play it, keep the battery out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I take mine out.
Case.
If I'm not using my Ripley, I just take the batteries out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And good night, Nerd Halen.
Yeah. I'm going to be saying goodnight in a minute, too. I'm exhausted. It's almost 3 o'clock.
Well, Johnny, I didn't know you had a Ripley.
You're going to miss the moon landing, Dave. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, they're about ready to take off.
I missed it the first time.
It's looking like they're going to. They're heading back to
take off, hosers.
Columbia.
Columbia, Missouri.
That's the mothership.
The mothership.
You get Eagle, which is the lunar lander. Eagle will launch off the moon and redock with Columbia, the mothership, making Apollo 11 one again. And they'll be returning to Earth over the next 3 days.
Oh, this is creepy.
Yeah, well.
Good night, John.
So, yeah. Good stuff.
I mean, if anything, you guys, leave a thumbs up. If anything. Thumbs up. Right. Subscribe to the channel. Yeah. I mean, I would think we got 61 people. I'm thinking most of you probably, you guys know about this stuff, so you're here. But in future viewings, we've been getting 1,000 views per show past week or whatever.
Yeah, 39 thumbs up. Come on, that's a little pitiful right now. It's we've been on for 3 hours, right? Just about. Well, 2.5 hours anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's see those thumbs.
Get those thumbs up.
Leave some thumbs.
There you go.
And subscriptions and hugs.
Is it Cabo Wabo or Wabo Cabo?
Have you guys been to Cabo Wabo before?
Nah.
Man, the place is huge. When I walked
you've been there?
Yeah, I went there years ago. I went to scuba. I used to scuba dive a lot. And
2016, I was there. Yeah.
I walked in the first time. I was like, "My God, this place is massive. There's no parking lot. There's no parking lot."
It's just in the neighborhood. It's really just in the neighborhood. Yeah.
So when I read Sammy's book later on, it made sense because the story there, right? He was telling them in feet, and they were looking at meters.
Are you serious?
It's in the book. So he tells them, "Look, I want the building at so and so."
3,000
feet, whatever. Yeah. They're talking 3,000 meters.
Wow.
So when he gets down there, it's already half completed because he comes off. He talks about this in his book later on. He's like, my God, that's why the metric versus imperial English measurements. And he's like, oh, Lord, I wish I could have known this earlier. They didn't take pictures and they built it. And it's like, now it's too late. And
at least it wasn't the opposite, too small.
Yeah.
Well, and it's even larger than that because he wanted 3,000 square feet, and they made it 3,000 square meters.
And
Square meters. That's insane. That's humongous.
And that's why the building is about the size of the property. If you look at when you walk into it, you're like, oh Lord, because they have the old Van Halen stuff, the drum set, a few other things. He's got some loot. He's got Alex's old Ludwig kits.
Pictures right here. Yeah, I got
you'll see it, and they got the wall, the striped wall. When they first donated, they went down and played, and then in Sammy's book, he really goes into detail. They flew down, did the show, they did that weekend, MTV weekend. It was full, and then about a week later, nobody showed up, and nobody stayed there.
Yeah,
well, who's going to Cabo?
That's when everyone else, Ed and the boys bailed out.
And Cabo was a resort town, a fishing resort town, years ago, and it's not like it is now. All the hotels weren't even there. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's me in Cabo 2016, my Sammy shirt, and they got the drum kit there and some of the leftover cabinets and stuff. I can't hold my hands straight. So
it's great. I mean,
the main stage.
Yeah,
cool. That's cool, man.
What else do I got? There's the stage without me, a little better.
Yep. And now he's really does his birthday bash down in September. He goes down and everybody shows up now. Except
Steve Anderson's on his way, pretty much. What do you say? 80 sleeps until Cabo, something like that.
The sleeps. Yeah, that's right. Good night, Zach. Good night, man.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, that's where Steve is right now. He's on his way down to Cabo right now.
That's right. Slowly working down to Cabo.
He's sleeping his way down there.
I hate to drive that. That would be crazy to drive from LA to Cabo. Well,
Steve's in Vancouver, so.
Oh wow.
I heard you can't drive. I heard the roads are the worst.
It's pretty bad.
I mean, it's the tip of it's the very end of like the California coast, the West Coast, pretty much. Yeah, the very end,
Sammy said in his book, if you read it, he talks about he's driving down a motorhome and all the farm animals are all over the road at night. You can't drive at night. You have to drive during the day because there's no fences in Mexico area then. He said he'd be driving down and next thing you know, there's a big cow in the middle of the road. You can't, run over a cow.
Well, he really built that town. I would say. I mean, at the time, like you say, when they built that club, there nobody was going down there, and it was,
Yep.
And Sammy made a name of it,
Now it's huge, not even because of Cabo Wabo, not because of the club, not because.
Well, it's a great place. I mean, it's amazing.
But you hear of a lot of celebrities. They're like, we're going to Cabo, and it's not because of Sammy. It's not because of that club, but it's because of the town. It's become a huge tourist destination.
Tourist.
There was only like two hotels down there then, and then now corporate world resorts have come in. All the reuse and all the different resorts came in now, and that's where the money is now. They built that whole town up now, the whole city up.
And I think they got pretty devastated in 2014 with a hurricane too, or whatever they call it on the West Coast, typhoon or something like that. When I was there in 2016, they were still recovering from a lot of damage from a hurricane a few years earlier. And I mean, it's poverty. I mean, it's really not. It's a pretty I don't know which not third world, but it's economically they're struggling down there, and the tourism is the biggest thing they have.
Yeah. It's not as bad as Jamaica. I was in Jamaica a few years ago, and I stayed at a nice, huge resort, and I didn't realize how much they made an hour. I mean, you don't think about this, when you live in America. So they make $1 an hour at this resort. So I give the guy a $20 bill for breakfast. I was like, look, man, here's your tip. You worked your butt off for the break. It's a big buffet breakfast. I don't have any tens on me, so I just give me a $20 bill. The guy goes berserk because, you think about this, we don't think about that from an American perspective, but when somebody makes $1 an hour and somebody gives you a $20 tip, that's like 2 days worth of work.
Yeah.
And but when you go to some of these countries, you have to be guarded to a point because you don't realize how much they're so much less fortunate than we are in America. You know, people want to complain in America. You guys don't understand. There's a lot of places in the world that are nothing like we are. You know.
Yeah, but the cost of living down there is so much different than up here. You couldn't make. Of course, you couldn't make the money that they make down there because you can't make it. You know, in New York, $40,000 a year. You ain't living in New York.
No.
You ain't living in New York for $60,000 a year. I don't care how you think you're doing. It's crazy.
You're camping out every night. But I mean that's crazy because Nashville used to be a really economic town to live, but I'm paying $40 a day to park right next to the convention center. You got to think now the apartments in Nashville now are renting for $2,400 for a single bedroom apartment now. We've transversed into the next LA and New York from revenue side of rent and stuff. But we have no state income tax. That's why a lot of your celebrities and music people have moved here now. I met Robert Deal a couple of years ago downtown. Mick Mars is his stage name, but I met him. All these different people. I didn't realize they lived in Nashville for years, and then next thing you know, you meet them somewhere out in a music store or a guitar show, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't know you lived here. And
it's really the music city of today.
It is.
Nashville is the music city of today. As much as in LA, maybe it was LA in the '80s and stuff like that, but nowadays Nashville is the place to be for music industry and even especially as a guitarist or just someone who's in the music scene. I mean, Nashville's huge.
The studio time is very cheap still in Nashville versus like LA and other parts of the world. But now mostly you can do your processing at home. You can record most of your stuff at home now. You don't really need a 64 track or 128 track recording studio anymore like you think you do, unless you're doing some major production systems now, because everything now is going to digital, laptops have went so tremendously in
Pro Tools and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's like amp modeling. I was seeing amp modeling today. It's amazing what they've done in the last 10 years for amp modeling. From the old Marshall Plexi days in the 70s, pure power behind you. It's like virtualizing a Ferrari engine in a way, because you have that raw power behind you, that huge Marshall stack, and you're modeling now to the headphones mechanisms on a laptop. It's amazing.
Dave, you're going bye-bye? David's out of here. Nesdal, good night.
He left.
Oh, wow.
He could have waited 6 more minutes.
6 more seconds and said good night.
Dude.
Where are we at? Yeah, almost 3 o'clock, so. It's all good, man.
6 more minutes.
I'm sure, David, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay at the moment. I'll get to sleep late tomorrow.
It's been a long day for you, yeah.
Yeah, I had to go in last night after NAMM show and help. We talk about a place called Make Nashville. I had to go in and do some single phase wiring last night for them. So I had to fix the welders and some of their electrical systems because I have an electrician license from years ago. I can still wire stuff and everything. But
cool.
HVAC, because I went to school at night. My company sent me to HVAC classes at night for air conditioning systems and electrical systems, so I can write patentable products for our company at the time. So you have a lot of diversity for different perspectives, but I still like
in demand. You're in demand.
See, my hobby now, I don't do this full time, but my hobby is like building amps and guitar bodies and tremolos and stuff like that, because that's my passion. I don't watch television really. If I do, I usually read about 2 or 3 books a week, and I just focus my input away from work into things that it makes me want to do things. And then you'll say that somebody wants to spend 9 months building an electric guitar that's going to go out to the public, and they're going to pay $25,000 for it. But you could do one, say that you want to build your own B guitar, but you might want to build it 100% accurate, but it may take you 2 months because it's going to take you all that time to research. But you don't have to go through the legal. You don't have to go through all the marketing systems and everything. But you build it for yourself. So it's a little different. But I mean, there's a passion involved in all this anyway. If you didn't have passion, you wouldn't be wanting to do this, and you
Absolutely,
wouldn't spend,
all the way.
You wouldn't spend 2 hours on a Google Hangout talking about it. So it's we all we grew up in it. That's the thing. Now we grew up in a world that we saw this in concert. The younger generation has not seen this because we grew up in a world where you saw bands like every week in cities and stuff. Everybody,
and you paid $8 for a ticket to go to the stadium and see Rolling Stones or Queen or something like that.
Yes, true.
In the late 70s, early 80s.
Now look at it. There's really not many artists touring big anymore or touring as much because touring's totally changed. Now everything's changed in the music industry now. But I'm saying 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the younger generation will be like, you remember we had a concert for so-and-so or, whatever. But our generation, we saw so many concerts. I used to see concerts every week, for years. I probably saw
that was my summer for 10 years, just working concerts and watching them as well.
I was talking to one of my old friends from junior high and high school. We saw Saxon. You remember the band Saxon? We saw them like 14 times in 1 year because they would tour opening for this. They would open for these other bands. It's like, come on, we just saw them 2 weeks ago.
14 times.
You remember Crocus? Crocus out of Scandinavia. They were.
Man, you're talking about like Metallica influences. Those are the names that I've heard throughout the Metallica history when they would their influences and Diamond Head and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Metal Church, all these old bands. Look at Metallica. Metallica they got big on the college radio circuit. That's how
underground. Underground. Whatever was underground at that time. Early 80s.
They let you come in. They let you record their concerts, audio record. You remember this was years back in the 80s and stuff like that. And then they did that for years. They would open. You take pictures. You could do all that stuff. Because see, they were a band building their reputation up, and then they did Monsters of Rock, and that was their biggest platform at the time. And then
88, Yep.
And then. Whatever happened to Kingdom Come? You remember that band? I always wondered about that.
Led Zeppelin influenced. And that was their biggest thing was the Monsters of Rock 88 opening for all those bands, Metallica, Scorpions,
and Talkin,
Van Halen, Talkin, Kingdom Come. I never really was into them that much, but I know they're well respected and that they really had a huge Zeppelin influence, which I'm into.
And Robert Plant lives here he lives here in Nashville. You'll see him around every now and then, but don't talk about Led Zeppelin with him. You got to talk bluegrass or something. Like I met Jimmy Page years ago at the Gibson factory, and we talked about bluegrass because my background, I have a lot of. When I was younger, I played bluegrass and stuff. My dad, my brother played bluegrass, so I got to relate to them from a different perspective. When you meet most people in the celebrity realm, you don't want to talk about what they did. Talk to them about their interest. That will get them better. Like when I talked to like George, we talked about weightlifting and stuff. He sat there and spent 20 minutes with me talking to me, almost 30 minutes talking about like weightlifting and stuff like that. Because the last thing he wants to hear about is 1986 guitar solo or 1984 guitar solo. He has no conceptual idea of that anymore. Because I met him the first time was the Lynchbox when they came out with the Lynchbox amps. Years ago, the modulation Randall systems. That was a genius idea. But I don't see those Lynchbox cabinets anymore, or those guitar heads hardly ever anymore. I mean, those were, to my knowledge, those were really cool state of the art.
Who made those? Was that his own brand or
Randall? You remember Randall?
Randall, okay, yeah, sure.
And then
Dimebag used that,
and then there's an interesting story about Dimebag. I could talk about in Biloxi, Mississippi. I heard this story when I was down there a few years ago, but back on the Lynch box, those were cool amps because they were like a Marshall Plexi transformer with 6 preamps and 4 power tubes, and they had the modules in them. And then he would have, like, if you want the old original Talkin album, these were all analog systems, had tubes in them. You put the modules in, you would rack the modules into the amp, and that was but those modules were like $300 to $400 each. Wow. You know, so they were vacuum tube module systems. But here's the interesting story about Dimebag Darrell that I didn't know about at the time. I was in Biloxi, Mississippi. I was down there on a little vacation, so I drove down, and I'm eating lunch on the second floor at this little Subway place, and I look over and I thought, my God, that looks like the Steve Vai guitar. It's Jackson, you know, it had like the Jackson headstock and everything. I looked over and I said, well, that looks just like that Crossroads guitar, and I looked over and there it was. And Steve Vai signed it and everything. It was his original guitar from that movie. From the movie. And I was like, wow, this was years ago. I saw it. It's like, wow.
Was that a Jackson that he played in that, or?
Yeah, like a Charvel Jackson had the, you know, pointy headstock. I think it was a Jackson. They just covered up the name or something on it. But I took pictures of the front and back, but it's on the second floor. So I walk over to check into the hotel. I go over to the restaurant, and the restaurant had a Washburn Dimebag Darrell display guitar, but it had all the seaweed, and it was like utterly like crazy, you know, relic. I mean, it's old. So what happened was, here's the story that happened there. I said, what happened? They said, oh, this is the guitar that hit when Hurricane Katrina hit. We were doing a soft opening that weekend at the casino. So what happened was they were getting ready to open the Hard Rock Casino in Biloxi, Mississippi, and they had all their families come in for a soft opening to make sure they got everything correctly built and everything. So Katrina was going to hit that 3 p.m. that afternoon. They evacuated the whole building area, and 32 feet of water rushed in and took out the whole casino. So the guitar was floating in the Gulf of Mexico for 6 months, and they found it. And after they found it, they put it on a plaque. So if you go down to Biloxi, Mississippi, you'll see, if it's still there. This was a few years ago. This is probably 6 or 8 years ago, I think it was. They have Dimebag Darrell and his signature and everything. This is before he got killed and everything. This is when he was back in the band, Pantera band, back when he donated all this. It was one of his personal guitars. And it got all the pictures, got pictures of him signing it, his brother and everything. I mean, it's so historic, is what I'm saying, because, he lost his life, but then, the Katrina happened. And then next thing you know, they didn't find the guitar for like 6 months. It's an amazing story behind it.
Wow, that's a crazy story. I never heard that. It was lost and then found throughout Katrina.
There's probably a web page or something about all this eventually.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I'm sure there's.
When I was in Biloxi, I went and I was looking on memorabilia. They have one of Van Halen guitars. Every time I go to Hard Rocks anywhere in the world, I always look for the Van Halen guitars. You always, pique the interest of, figuring out where, when, and what it is,
Yeah.
But they had one of his guitars, but it was a 12-string. I took pictures of it when I was down there last time, about a year ago. There's a 12-string Fender that he donated, and then he donated his one of his parachute. What are the overalls? You remember the overalls? He donated one of his overalls, the white and black. I mean, the white and the red, white
the striped ones.
The striped ones. They were hanging up down there at one time. I don't know if they're still down there, but they had them down there.
I've seen a
Hard
picture.
Rock in. Were you talking about Hard Rock in Nashville or?
No, in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Biloxi, okay.
I've seen a picture of that. It looks like the ones he was wearing at the US Festival.
Probably. Those are the most famous ones.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
And they had some cool memorabilia. So but the memorabilia, his David Lee Roth and Eddie's, they call it the jumpsuit for Eddie. It's in the hotel side, not on the. You have to have a room there to get access to see that. It's like on the 4th floor or something like that. You walk in on the 4th floor and you'll see it. It's like, it's not visual on the main walk. You know, you can't really see that until you check into the hotel and be on that floor or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have to know about it, you know, because I was asking everybody there, hey, what kind of Van Halen stuff you have? You know, first time you're there, you know, you're geeking out. Hey, what's there? What's this? You know, then they'll say, oh, go up to the fourth floor, you know, and you see that, and it takes you 20 minutes to find it. And it's like, oh, you know, they don't really fully advertise that. And
Wow.
that's one thing about the hard rocks. I've always wondered why they don't have like a full database. Because I asked them when I was down there a few years ago, what hard rock casino or hard rock hotels and casinos you have that have all your Van Halen. They said, we have to call. We don't even know because they move everything around all the time. You know, they move around like New York, and Rome has the give the guitar. The donation guitar that Eddie had years ago.
Oh,
it used to be in New York. Now it's in Rome, I think. Rome, Italy, I think, isn't it? Johnny might know. It's been a year since I've looked that up, or 2 years since I looked it up.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it may be somewhere else now because hard rock. Another thing I did, I asked him. I said when I was down there, look, how can I get? Is there a petition or something you need to sign? Like if I want to get the Rome guitar in Italy brought to Nashville, you know, at the Hard Rock restaurant, can you do it? And they looked at me like I was nuts. It's like, well, is there a way you could do that? Like request it at a location, you know, for a couple of years or so. But that's one thing they really need to do, you know.
That'd be cool.
Circulate that around and have. Here's what I would do if I was running Hard Rock. I would have it like a web page. You vote on it. So you know, if it's already been in New York, now LA, all these other cities that have, man, that would be a marketing.
I think this is the Rome.
Yep, that's it.
Stripes.
Yeah,
because we never got a picture of the back of the guitar before. You remember?
No.
That's one I was working with Dave on and some other people. We were talking about it about a year ago. And I emailed them in Rome, Italy, and asked them, hey, can you take it out of the case and take a picture of the back of it? And they never responded back to me, you know. So, but you can only fight so long, you know, asking questions on stuff before they pretty much block you from it, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Or they don't respond to you anymore in emails. But
well, they're like, you know, what's he talking about?
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
They're all about business. They're not about the details of anything. They just, you know, they want to get the best instruments they can, and
you know, that's
turn them over.
David, that's actually what would be a really great idea was, let's say you go into a location and let's say there's like a computer there, and you can scroll through like everything they have, and you can like vote for what you would like to see in that location.
Exactly. Or
that would be cool.
Or like if you have a Hard Rock in San Francisco, they never had that guitar. See, I'm not dinging Hard Rock because they got a great conceptual idea. But here's the thing that I noticed. The merchandise inside the stores, you know, the memorabilia, they don't circulate it around because it's the same stuff after, you know, I don't know, 10 years, 12 years. What they should do every 6 months to a year, they rotate stock around, you know, so that you'd have interest coming in all the time, because
like coming back
and moving around.
You don't go there for the food.
No. You bring in your own sack food, you know.
Yeah, I met the New Kids on the Block at the Hard Rock Cafe, Boston.
Oh, wow.
1988.
Oh, you did?
Around then?
When there was
I met who was the
Joey
was the one I met. Yeah.
Mark
and it was just a coincidence. I was having dinner. I think my aunt took me out for my birthday, and he was sitting like 2 tables next to us.
And you were a huge fan.
I wasn't a fan, but I did. But we were like, "Hey, that's Joey from New Kids," and like, let's go meet him. So
from the cartoon, maybe you were watching the cartoons. Maybe.
Yeah. My sister was a big fan.
I was never. My sisters were huge fans of theirs. Yeah, they went and saw them and were screaming.
Absolutely.
You know, I heard all about it. Yeah.
And then subsequently, I met a lot of them throughout. After they were huge and they went on their solo careers, they came through the club that I worked at, and some of the local crew stuff that I did, they were always on like the radio shows and stuff like that, and the radio sponsored concerts and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan and who was the other one? Michael Knight was not Michael Knight. Jordan Knight, I think it was.
This is the first we've talked about new kids on here, you guys.
And this is the last of it too. This is the end of it.
Well, they're back together now. They're touring.
Yeah, with was it?
Because I've
Donnie
Wahlberg. Facebook friends who go to that stuff, and I see all those pictures. And yeah, the Wahlberger. That's a huge.
That's
thing.
my Massachusetts. There's a few of them in our area.
Is it
Those
good?
are Boston boys. I haven't been there, but I've seen the show.
Dude, you'll have to go and grab one.
We'll do a live
for one of these shows.
Wahlburgers.
Do a review of a Wahlburger.
It's the East Coast version of In and Out.
Of In and Out or Five Guys or something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, didn't Donnie marry Jenny McCarthy? Or I can't remember. I didn't know because she's got a.
Was it Donnie or the other one or what's the
Darnie?
Yeah, I don't know if it's Donnie or I didn't know which one it was.
Johnny, Bonnie.
Because she has a Sirius Radio show, and I listened to her interview Sammy Hagar a couple weeks ago, or about a month ago, whatever.
A while back.
Yeah, a while back.
I saw some of that on YouTube. I saw just a clip. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he was talking about Jason Bonham and stuff, because Jason, they did an interview with Howard Stern the day before, the controversy about that one. And him.
Was that the Circle interview? Or
yeah. And they was talking about Jason Bonham and stuff, and it was really interesting, so. But then I didn't realize she had a talk radio show, but she married one of the Wahlbergs. I don't know which one it was. I can't remember which Wahlberg it was she married, but it's interesting that because I try to listen to interviews to, catch up on some things, but I don't have Sirius Radio anymore unless I get a rental car or something, but I just don't. I can't keep up with it anymore, man. It's so much.
Howard Stern had some great interviews back in the day, and nowadays it's just because he went to Sirius. Yeah. That's when I stopped listening to him back in the mid 2000s.
Yeah. It's good to hear some interviews, but you don't know what is actually true and what's actually believable to a point, because people's thoughts change and their personalities change when they get older too, and then their memory's gone too to a point, So if you ask somebody something from 1979, it's like, I don't know it, they'll say, well, they know the highlights, but they don't know all the details, because really, I was asking some people last year about the 78 guitar, and it's like Eddie's mother had all these pictures, and that's really because they didn't know that Eddie didn't remember a lot of this stuff, so they went back to the pictures, and then Wolfgang found the pictures upstairs.
Is she still alive? I know his dad passed a long time ago. Is Eugenia still alive? No?
Yeah, no, she's died. That's when Valerie, they were still married. He was still married to Valerie, because she talks about it in her book about they get the call that morning, and she passed away overnight.
When was that? Several years ago?
Yeah, it was 91 or something like that.
Wow.
Valerie talks about it like a whole chapter in a book.
That's around when Jan died too, I think.
Or she died years later. I'll have to look it up.
No, Mr. Van Halen, he passed away in '87, I think.
Oh, okay.
Because 0812 is dedicated to him. Look on the insert of 0812, and it says, "This one's for you, Pa." And that was for him. And then I think Edward was doing an interview with the two dorks, those guys from Iowa. And that was in like 2003, 2004, somewhere, 2005. And he had talked about how his mom had passed away.
Yeah, something like that. Because I remember in the book, Valerie talks about, they get a call, so they drive over. And and everything. And, she talks about it in full detail in her book. It's really good. The details about all that stuff. About, Ed Now's mom passing away, like she talked about, like, I think it was like chapter 6 or 7 in her book that she talks about it. So I read a lot of autobiography books when I can. It's really good to, get
I will say Valerie's a good source of some Van Halen trivia.
Yeah.
You look into some of her old bios and stuff like that. She's got a lot to say, and she was well involved in through the 90s. She was a big part, and people, fans kind of forget that.
Absolutely. Because Eddie moved in, he lived with his parents. The story is, Eddie lived
into 1980. I think it was like up to 1980. I think after the second album.
He was driving a Jeep around LA all the time. He had a Wrangler Jeep, and then he comes to her house, and he comes and pretty much moves in. And
the Renegade.
There you go.
Yep, you got a picture of it, I guess. It's been years.
That's right. The Renegade. Just happened to have it open to that page.
And then, their neighbor was Lindsay Wagner from Bionic Woman. She talks about all this in detail in her book. That she met Lindsay Wagner on the NBC set because NBC did both TV shows. And she's like, Valerie was like 16. She's like, I want to buy a house. And she's like, well, next door, you need to buy the house next door. It's a ranch 3-bedroom house. And then Lindsay Wagner, the racquetball court, you know the story about this, right? The racquetball court studio points straight out the door to her bedroom.
Is that right?
Lindsay Wagner's bedroom. See, that's where the new house is.
What was she? She was on a TV show
Bionic
at that
Woman.
point.
You remember Bionic Woman from the 70s?
Bionic Woman, yes.
So, see, Valerie, that was really Valerie's mentor. She talks about all this in her book. Lindsay Wagner kind of helped her in her Hollywood career and everything. But so her neighbor was her. And so what happened was when Eddie had the studio, because, he used to crank up in her back bedroom and, rock the windows in their house. She's like, you got to get out of here.
I can imagine, man.
You can't do this in my house. I got to be up at 7 a.m. in the morning. He's like at 2 a.m. in the morning, cranked up, ready to go. So she moves him out to the racquetball court, and she doesn't realize that's going to turn into the studio. This is what she talks about in the book. And then what happens is Eddie's out there, and you got to understand, this is like a 30 by 90 racquetball court. 40-foot ceilings. So when you put Marshall cabinets in there, that thing's going to be like a microphone inside of a building. So he would open the doors up. So here's what she talks about, in her stories and stuff. So what happens is Eddie's like at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, he's cranked up, trying to record when they're building the studio. And he's got this thing, cranked 130 decibels, full volume. And at 2 a.m., and her house sits right below the doors of the 5150 studio. So he opens the door, goes straight to her bedroom. Back in the day before they built the new house, because she's like, Lindsay would call me up. So you tell your husband to turn that down. I'm calling the police. Because, that was a big story for years, that Lindsay she hated Ed because he would wake her up all the time.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And she
only knew.
She said that. So what happened was in the book, it talks about when they wanted to build a new house, they bought Lindsay Wagner out. She owned like 8 acres. So that's why if you see the house,
her property, yeah.
That's why they built a massive house. That's Lindsay Wagner's old estate is there next door. So the girl, wow. So the next door neighbor to them, unless she sold, the I can't remember her name. She's on the show called The L Word on Showtime years ago. She's an artist. She's a painter. She's the next door neighbor to them. I'll think of their name in a minute. Sorry, but
you can always ask the chat. You can ask who's what. We got 52 people watching us. Maybe somebody knows.
Jennifer Beals?
Not her. It's the other one.
Jennifer Beal. Wasn't that Flashdance?
Yeah, right. She did.
Who was talking about Flashdance?
There's a huge cast of
I'll tell you in a second. I'll look it up. But her neighbor,
Pam Grier.
Not her. It's the other one. And she's a painter. She does old paintings and stuff. And they're the neighbor the Van Halens for years. Her and her husband, Laura Hallman. Laura Hallman.
Yeah, you're Laurel Hall. Yes.
Yeah, that's her. She is,
painter.
yeah, she's the
There you
neighbor.
go.
You go out there, you see the old house was a ranch 2-bedroom house with a pool out back. You remember seeing the pictures with Eddie on the back area where his Porsches were parked. That's where next to the pool. You'll see the pool, and he was on the. There's a picture somewhere. Somebody shared it years ago, but David Bertinelli was taking a lot of pictures back in those days, and it shows Eddie flipping the 5150 upside, backwards on the diving board. You remember? And that's the old pool at the old house before they tore it down. And the whole house is tore down. That's where they park all the vehicles now. If you see it, that's where the old house is, or was. I'm sorry, the old 2-bedroom ranch house. But and then Valerie moved away. She moved about 2 miles away, and she has another house. And
let's go there right now.
Yeah, and
Coldwater Canyon.
Yep, and it's a massive. The new houses. That's where Wolfgang lives. Last time I heard, because Eddie, I heard Eddie lives somewhere else now, but he uses the estate really. It's interesting, from that, but you'll see pictures and stuff of it. But a lot of the area around there, a lot of celebrities live around there. But Lindsay Wagner moved to San Bernardino or somewhere because, her career really changed after in the late 80s and early 90s. She kind of pretty much retired, and she lives in San Bernardino, I think, now.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the 5150 Studios. 3371 Coldwater Canyons Studio City.
And you'll see, if you take a picture or a close-up, you'll see the very center was the old racquetball court that Valerie had in her house when she bought the house. It came with a racquetball court. And see, back in the early 80s, you could not have a studio in Studio City. It was unpermitted. You could not have one of those. Even celebrities couldn't have a studio. So you got to read. This is a funny story. You have to read about what him and Don Landy did. They built a studio and told everybody else it wasn't a studio. It was actually they come up with some other information.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, he kind of classified it as something else.
The codes were going to fine him $5,000 a day. You remember? It was all over the news back in 83 or something like that, or 82 and 83. And then he had to go in front of the zoning appeal board in Studio City, and he had to bring his lawyers and everything in back in the day. I remember when I was a kid reading this, it's like, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, the construction on Eddie's property was passed off to city inspectors as a racquetball court, disregarding the soundproof walls with cinder blocks filled with concrete. A hitch arose in the form of a powerful AM antenna from a sports station, blah, 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 to prevent Eddie from picking up box. I don't know what that has to do with it, but yeah. Well, so I mean, yeah, they kind of dodged the construction rules at that time.
And here's another thing that if you've been to the property or anything, see the houses around there are higher up. They're higher. The 5150 studio is like here, and all the houses above there is like 800 feet higher up on elevation. But the house, the old house where the new mansion is now, was where he was blasting Lindsay Wagner at night at 2 a.m. in the morning. You got to understand, it's like sitting in front of a jet engine to 130 decibels.
Yeah.
Is like uncontrolled jet engine,
That's painful. I mean, according to 120 is the threshold of pain, I think, in all standards.
So really, when they bought Steve for years, he was recording the albums and stuff, and then when they finally they pretty much bought out everybody in the neighborhood because he couldn't really move the studio at the time. You see what I mean? So he had to. The easiest way for them to do is just buy out everybody around them, like Lindsay and all them, and then they would build this massive house, and then he would just golf cart right over to the studio. And then so there's nobody that would bother them now. And then he refortified the studio, soundproofed it quite a bit from the racquetball court, because they couldn't tear down the building because then they have to go through full zoning, like most buildings. You can't tear it down because you have to start all over with zoning, and he would never got a studio built. It would have been years later. So he kind of
back in that day, it wasn't certainly wasn't common for someone to have their own full studio. I mean, that was before a home studio was really affordable to most people.
Absolutely.
And it was there wasn't Frank Zappa had one. There wasn't a lot of people in LA that had that kind of the money to do that, and it was big at that time.
And if you read the interviews with Dweezil, there's a book that Dweezil wrote in talking about Eddie would come over to Frank's house and ask him studio questions. He was wanting to build his own studio. That's why he was talking to Frank, because Frank did have a studio, like you say. Not many people had studios back in the days because Eddie wanted to have his own full control. He was tired of dealing with all the Ted Templeman and all that stuff doing it. He wanted to do the albums his way, and he wanted everything at his house, And so here's another story that I heard years ago. This is interesting too. I heard this from a well-known person. When Dweezil was in high school, I don't know if it may have been published somewhere, but what happened was Dweezil was starting out playing guitar, and he wanted to play Van Halen, in his high school. So what happened is Eddie was in town. This was in, I think, 83, I think it was, when he was working with Frank a lot. So the story is
this when he gave him the Rasta?
Oh, this was way before this. So what happened is he was just learning how to play the guitar. Dweezil was, and he wanted to impress all his friends at a talent show in Hollywood, wherever school he went. So here's what happened. He would say, "Hey, Dad, Frank, can you call Eddie to see if Eddie can come over to teach me how to do this?" And Ed and Frank were good friends, and so this is what happened one time. I got it written down somewhere, and I got it on audio. It's at one of the NAMM shows. I got it recorded, and what happened was Dweezil was telling me the story about this. He went to school and he couldn't figure out how to do it. So what happened was, this is what he did. Eddie says, "Look, guy, you go up front of the stage and I'll hook up in the back and I'll play all this for you." So what he did was Dweezil went out on stage with a fake plugged up guitar, and Eddie's in the back with a cat.
Is that right?
He's playing it. That's what he said.
Wow.
See, he did it to homage to Frank because he was Frank was giving him all the studio and he was trying to help Frank much as he could. And Dweezil was, like a sponge to Eddie back in the day.
Yeah.
That's the story I heard one time. And then they made a big, friendship years later, then he was always talking to Frank all the time. But
what was the first one that Ed gave to Dweezil? Was it the Star or the Rasta?
I don't know. It's been years. I have to go back and look at my research paper.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
I used to document all this stuff, man. I used to document all the stories and take all the interviews and encapsulate them together so you can have like a full search engine database, But I just haven't had time lately to look that back up again. But now Dweezil did do a demo of that Rasta guitar last year.
A year ago, yeah.
About a year ago. I just saw the video a while back, and it was really interesting. And he talked about the
Good night,
neck.
Tony.
He talked about, I still can't understand. Look, I'm still trying to get over this information about the blood on the neck and then the puke stains or something. I don't know all the details. He talks about this, but I can't understand where all this came from anyway. So there may be a lot of history behind it I don't know about. So
the truth is, I think the truth is, any of those kind of stains, you would have that night, if Ed bled or puked on a guitar at a concert at any given night in 1980, 81, something like that, they would have washed it off that night. They would have cleaned the fretboard, put it away in the case, and it would have been clean. That's the way they did things. A tech, was it who at that time? Was it Rudy Laren at that time would have cleaned that guitar before he put it in the case. And there's no reason why a guitar like that, maybe there's a photograph of it with a blood stain on it. Maybe there's a photograph with a puke stain on it, whatever. But it wasn't anything that lasted more than a day or two, I would guess.
Now,
You know?
and Neil, what was the manager's name? He come out with a book a few years ago. You remember?
Noel.
Noel,
Noel Monk. Yeah.
Noel Monk. Now, Noel talks about
I
Eddie.
had to use the bathroom. We'll be right back.
He was talking about using the guitars. You know, remember he talked about Eddie going to the hotel rooms with his guitars and he'd have them tore down on the floor. And the big story was and he talks about in his book that Alex had some girl and they came to Eddie's room and she steps on all his hardware on the floor. You remember the story about that? And she goes berserk and he gets up and Eddie gets mad and punches the wall and hurts his hand and stuff. He talks about it. Noel talks about it. It's like next thing I know, I get a call and Eddie's got to go to the hospital because we think he broke his hand. And then it's because of Al's girlfriend or something, because he said that Eddie had his guitar tore all apart. He used to do this a lot. He used to go to hotel rooms and tear his guitar apart, redo it all the time. Because, you know, back in those days, you know, he was trying to get this thing to work right. You know, it's like working on an engine, you know, or Harley Davidson every day. You had to work on it every day. And in one of the stories, he talks about Eddie punching the wall, and they had to rush him to the hospital that night to see if his hand's broken. You know, it's in 82 or 80, something like it. It had been 82 or so, 81, 82 is when he talks about that in the book. It's interesting.
Probably 82, because I remember there was he had like a, I don't know if it was broken.
I think
they said he had a fractured wrist.
That's what it was, yeah. And they thought at first it was broken because it was swelling up and stuff. And they said they were rushing him to the hospital at 2 a.m. in the morning, you know. And it's like, oh Lord, you know, if his Noel talks about it in the book, he's like, if his hand's broken, then we're going to have to cancel the tour, you know. You know, what are you going to do? You can't just replace Eddie, you know. You have to cancel the tour. And everybody was all grasping. And the next thing you know, they found out it was a fractured hand or something, you know. So.
Fractured wrist, yeah.
Fractured wrist, yeah.
Hey, Sean.
Wrist.
Sean Silas. Good to see you, man. Sean Silas.
Hey, Sean Silas.
Yeah. Our friend David Allen Wright here. He's got some great Van Halen stories.
But there was also, you know, to get some of this information, you have to read some of the different books. Like Valerie was really dead on a lot of stuff in her book, but she didn't use Eddie as a mechanism to sell books. She just talked about her history with him, you know, being married to him and their life together, you know. And then Sammy, he went in a different tangent later in his book. You know, he had to work on, you know, they worked together more, you know, from a professional working environment. But I've always wondered if David Lee Roth would ever come out with a book, because it would pretty much.
Well, he did Crazy from the Heat, but that was
you know,
probably 20 years ago nowadays. And it was,
I don't think
he didn't want to say anything incriminating at that point, I think.
And also, I don't think people have the memory like they used to anymore anyway, unless you got to understand the only way you could probably remember half the stuff is you have to have a diary, and you would write every day about what you did this tour, what, you know, this show. But a lot of people won't go that much detail back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, because hell, half of them probably want to forget half the stuff that they happened, you know. And that's the book. That's an awesome book to read there, you know, from the history side. Back in the club days, you know, I didn't realize he was the manager of the Sex Pistols, and he talks all about that. That was really good, you know.
Touring with a lot of different bands back in the day, yeah. I mean, as well as this one too, which is just great.
Yep. And then Valerie's got 2 books out. The first one, her autobiography, she goes into a lot of details, talks about stuff, talks about the roadies, the women. It was always they would find people in their house. They didn't know how in the world they got in the house. And they would be trying. She'd have to run women off all the time, and you know they somehow they get into the house at Coldwater Canyon, you know. And it was amazing that she talked about that.
Just read the prologue to Noel Monk's book, and it's, you know, it starts in 1982, and it just goes, you know, it's the full backstage experience at a show in 1982 with the women and the it just goes from beginning to end. Just the prologue of that book talks about a whole day in the life of Van Halen in 1982, and it's women, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, that's what it is,
Because I remember it was called Heavy Metal Day at
Us Festival.
Festival in 1983, because that was in 82. That was the first year Steve Wozniak, from Apple. That's his brainchild, and he wanted. See, they didn't have really a huge heavy metal acts in 82. So in 83, they said, hey, we're going to do a whole day dedicated for heavy metal. Because, man, I remember this like yesterday. They had Quiet Riot, Ozzy Osbourne, had Jakey Lee playing guitar for Ozzy that day.
Judas Priest, Scorpions, Triumph.
Triumph with Rick Emmett, because I was a huge Rick Emmett fan with the slide playing he would do, because he was a left-handed player playing right-handed. So if you ever talk to Rick Emmett, he's a left-handed guitar player, but he plays
underrated, very underrated. Yeah, I love
he's
that.
A songwriter and a singer, and so he would write a lot of stuff in open G and open D and open A and stuff like that. A lot of your bluegrass music, but putting in contemporary of hard rock music. That's why I like a lot of his influential playing, because he played a lot of staccato like Vivian Campbell did. He would hit the notes from an impact of the string. But then they had Scorpions on that night, and then Van Halen played. That was a huge. You got to understand, that was a huge bill.
Oh, sure. It was a week. It was Memorial Day weekend, 1983. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Each day they had their own headliners, from David Bowie to who else was it? Stevie Nicks and U2 and God, the biggest performers of the 80s. And Van Halen headlined the set was I think Sunday night, heavy metal night.
The whole day. You couldn't even think of that now. Just think of that, trying to get the top bands now. Only one band would want to headline. You see what I mean? Because everybody thinks they're so much better than everybody.
Those days are gone. Yeah.
But I mean, that's gone. That was an incredible show to see, and they thank goodness they videotaped a lot of that. All the shows were pretty much videotaped, like Motley Crue.
There's an archive somewhere of all that video. However, the versions that are out there, especially with Van Halen, are very low quality VHS stuff, and except for the Showtime stuff, which is the highlights of maybe 5 songs. It's not even a stereo recording. I've been looking for a stereo recording of the full Us Festival, and it's not out there. There were FM broadcasts and everything, but you can't find anything but the highlights that are in high quality.
So I need to look on torrents eventually. You remember the show called King Biscuit Flower Hour? They used to go out and they would have a tractor trailer that goes to all the different shows that
Westwood One,
and they would record these concerts, and they had really good audio back in the day, for that type of day, back in the early
everything
80s.
Multi-track mobile recording in the early 80s. That was the state of the art.
I wonder, because I never did hear Van Halen on a King Biscuit Flower Hour. If it did, maybe it's one song, but they used to do a whole concert. Like Rush would do one, Triumph would do one, Triumph, all these different bands. The big bands back in the day, they would do that. And but I always wondered if there's some audio out there, because that would be the best audio you could find from because
it's out there. I think Ed and the guys probably claimed all the tapes that were recorded that day. I think throughout there. If you read in the Neil, I keep saying Neil, the Noel Monk book, he talks about that bootleg stuff and all the stuff that was recorded on those tours. He would go into the booths and Largo 1982. He would take the master tapes and make sure that none of them got out. And the story behind the Us Festival video is that one of the guys that was running one of the cameras, or maybe running one of the video production booths behind the scenes, he had a VHS, and and he just recorded what came off the big screen to the audience. And if you watch any of the US Festival full videos, aside from the Showtime stuff, which is the highlights, there's all the same dropouts. There's like during Dave's rap when he's doing Ice Cream Man and talking, there's a part that it goes to color bars, and the transmission drops out. You can't find a recording that doesn't have that. There's one audience recording, some guy in the audience who recorded audio, which is, actually in stereo, and it's, from somebody in the audience. But like you say, the King Biscuit stuff, the Westwood One stuff, it hasn't been released. It was recorded. I've got the documents of all the US Festival technical riders and all that stuff. The company, the Clare Brothers Audio, that did the audio for that whole festival back in, Showco was the other company that did the sound and lights in Clare Brothers. There's a whole technical write-up about the whole thing, but it comes down to what was released and what Van Halen, what Warner Brothers, and what all of those people, Noel Monk, wanted to release. And at the time, in 1983, they had a contract with Showtime or HBO, one of those, and the story is that Ed and Dave actually did the editing on the, or maybe it was Al and Dave did the editing on the stuff that went to Showtime. So there's the original, video taps that came from that show with probably 10, 15 cameras that were shooting, in 1983 at that show. And those master tapes are either with Ed or with Historic Films that has released some of those. You got the Girl Gone Bad edit with some of the stuff that's leaked out, but it's out there, but we've never seen the best of it,
Yeah, because you just reminded me, because Showtime did record, because they showed. See, I may have this on VHS somewhere. I have to dig out through all my archives, because I used to record all the Showtime stuff back in the old days. Because that's right. They Showtime dedicated a whole hour on the Van Halen stuff at one time. They had a dedicated special.
I bought it on Amazon a year or so ago, and it's they've got the show, all the Showtime highlights.
Okay. Because I remember, Eddie didn't want to do that show at all. He fought them like crazy because he wanted to finish the album. He was in the middle of production on the 84 album, and they kept upping the money, and he's like, I don't want to do this show. Valerie talks about it in her book. She's like, Eddie's
it was in the Guinness Book of World Records. At that time they were the highest paid rock act in the world. In 1983 they made the Guinness Book of World Records for that show.
She said that in her book, she's like, Eddie doesn't want to do this show. The band's hasn't rehearsed in months. They just come back from South America. They're trying to do this album, and she's like, Eddie didn't want to do this show, and they kept putting pressure on him to do the show because they kept upping the money. And then finally he decided, look, we're just going to do it, after they made so much money on it. And then she talks about flying in on the helicopter with Eddie, and Eddie was already drinking at 10 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, dude, you need to control your drinking, And she's like, well, and then there's actually video that shows them flying in on the helicopter and stuff.
Yep.
But she talks about it in her book. She's like, after that, they come back, and he wanted to take 2 days off. And then but he went straight back in the studio. He didn't stop, because he would never really take breaks. He had the determination to get the album out, because I think they were like 2 months behind at the time anyway for production to release on January the 1st. You remember, for 84 album? Because I remember MTV did that show at midnight, and they played the Jump video. It came out, and then the album came out July 1st at the record stores. Because I had to go get it the first day. Back in those days, the albums were like $14 now. Man, it was amazing how much they were, and they're still the same price, right? If you could find an album.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like CDs. That's another thing. You know, albums were like $14 at the time. CDs were like $14, $16 an album, you know, CD. And then you could buy a DVD for $4.99.
Well, I
You know,
mean, you think about when video rentals were the big thing, VHS, and I
Yeah.
used to work at a video store in the early '90s, and you know, they were buying their new releases for $90 to $100 a cassette, and that was the only way you could buy. You know, if you were a consumer, you know, you couldn't go into Walmart in 1990 and buy you know, a video cassette of Jurassic Park or whatever it was, you know, Star Wars or something at that time, because the way the film companies sold them is, you know, you had to buy there were a few that, you know, that you could buy for, you know, $29.99 or something like that, but for the most part, laser discs and VHS. And when I was working at the video store, when they got a new release, it was $100 for a cassette, you know, and they'd buy 10 copies of it and it cost you $1,000, and they'd make their money back through the rentals and all that. But until DVDs came out, it was the sell-through market was you know $100 for a new, and then you could buy, you know, The Matrix in 1999 for $9.99 on DVD if you wanted.
because I remember concerts.
But it took a while to get to that point.
Absolutely. You know, think about the concerts, like if you're at the US Festival, and back in those days, a camcorder was like a suitcase size. That thing was huge.
Mhm.
So if you try to, how in the world are you going to smuggle this thing into a concert? I've always wondered, like you saw Van Halen in Montreal or one of the shows in
Exactly.
'84.
That's right.
How
yeah.
in the world did they smuggle that? A huge
I'll tell you,
camcorder.
there's a full story of that. If you go on, there's a site called Trader's Den, I think it is, and the guy Pierre, I want to say, or is a French name, Pierre, I think was the guy's name, and who did all the Montreal, all the shows that he bootlegged of Montreal Forum. And it tells you how he did it and how he, you know, would strap it to his back, and he'd wear a backpack, and it might be June, and he's got this full, you know, winter coat on, and he'd scope out the security, and he'd make sure, you know, they patting down every third person. Okay, make sure you're the second person in line of that pat down, and he'd go through it, and then you read the Noel Monk book, and who would beat the crap out of anyone who he found with a camera.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
God.
crazy. Yeah, I mean, but again, there is a whole write up that the guy who did those videos. I'll have to find that, put it in the Discord or something, because it's cool.
Because that's amazing. Because, you know, you're looking at a camcorder that's probably $2,000 then in 1980, say 84. VHS, or even if you can find an old Betamax, because Betamax was the best process systems. Sony had the best systems, Betamax, back in the day for years. And because I had a Betamax and a Laserdisc, and then I had to turn around and buy a VHS because everything went to that format later on, because you couldn't find Betamax tapes hardly anywhere after like 85. But yeah, it's, you know, I was a huge Rush fan, so every day I would come home and I would put on Exit Stage Left on Laserdisc, and I'd learn every instrument. I learned bass, guitar, piano, and then drums. And then, you know, it took me a year. When I was young, you know, I studied albums, so I would take 2112 and break it down and learn every instrument on the album. And it took a year. You know, after you learn 2112, then you get into like all the different Rush albums, Hemispheres, and everything. You learn all the albums from all three instruments. And then after you do that, you can pretty much play almost anything you want.
Yeah, I would say you could pretty much play anything after you've mastered that.
After you practice. I used to practice 6 hours a day. I used to put a blindfold on. I thought everybody did this when you're a kid. You know, when I didn't do that. I put a blindfold on and I would play slide guitar for an hour, listening in a dark room, playing slide to get your hearing, to see when you're on stage, you don't know where you're at in a reference point. So you got to know where, you know, if you're going to play a song in A, you know what the like the number systems, or you know your theory, so you already know your A. I learned another thing I did when I was a kid. I thought everybody did this. I would because Randy Rhoads is one of my huge influences when I was growing up. I wanted to learn all the 7 modes of music and stuff. So I got these whiteboards and put the modes up and put them on the wall on my ceiling.
Dorian, Locrian.
Yeah, and then you would have
Phrygian.
So
I learned those in college. Yeah.
Yeah, and I learned those, and I know maybe 13 years old, 14 years old, because Randy Rhoads was talking about all this stuff. And I thought, my God, I've got to learn what he was doing. So I would look up in the ceiling at night with a guitar in my, not hooked up, and I would sit there and learn the modes, the
wow.
whole note, semi-note, whole note, semi-note, whole note.
That's a rabbit hole. That's a rabbit hole to go down, man.
You would memorize it, and then you would learn. And then after that, I would map out the fretboard of the guitar, because all you got to do is learn the nut to the 12th fret, and then it repeats itself. So you memorize the fretboard. So after you there's only 5 strings you got to memorize, because
it's a limited amount of notes you got to learn.
Exactly. So you want to learn the first. I would take the first 3 frets of a guitar and memorize the first 3 frets of all 5 strings, actually 6, but you had to learn 5. Then you would work your way from the 3rd to the 5th, and the 5th to the 7th, to the 7th to the 9th, and then you memorize the fretboard. Then you understand how to read music. You see what I mean? So then you could do that. But what I'm saying is I thought everybody did that when you were a kid. You would sit there and learn these albums, because back in those days you didn't have cable TV like you do now. You don't have the internet. You had the album, and you had to study it, to learn it. So. And then you didn't have tablature like you do now. You had to learn sheet music. When I was growing up, it's like, Lord have mercy, I hate reading music. You had to break down sheet music. But then when tablature came out, when the magazine, you remember the practicing.
When did guitar tablature come out? Was it was it
80? I remember in 83 I started seeing tablature, maybe 82, 83, but the Guitar for Practicing Musician came out. Man, that changed everything, for a lot of players. And because me and my brother, we would teach. My brother was older, so he would teach me how does Eddie do this, from a tremolo whammy bar, because I would play drums a lot in the bands, and he would teach me like rhythm guitar and stuff. Because I'll tell you, I learned a lot of AC/DC stuff, because Bon Scott's my favorite singer of all, because I always wanted to learn the chords, the power chords that AC/DC used, because those chords are so huge, like an A chord or a G
that
chord
sound,
or F chord that sustain. I know Van Halen was huge from that side, but he did a lot of solo stuff and solo fretting and stuff like that. But his rhythm playing is really incredible. But I'm seeing AC/DC, hearing those two brothers come out with these riffs and overlapping each other. For me as a young person, it was a huge, because it was like, how in the world are they getting this tone from this? You would hit like an A5 chord, and it's like, oh Lord, that doesn't sound like an A5. It sounds like a full spectrum of the whole, but it's overlapping. One backup's playing one part of the A5, and the other one, Angus is playing another A, but the full A. You see what I mean? So it's meaning when you heard those chords, it's like, Lord have mercy. Those riffs are incredible. And
they didn't even know what they were doing at the time. I mean, the brothers. I mean, they played something that sounded good. And, they weren't theory based or anything like that. And they just sounded so good together, crank those Marshalls with an SG and a Gretsch. And,
that's right. And Eddie was the same
that's
way.
it. I mean, that's just the tone.
And, reading Eddie, he talked about years later, he did an article not long ago, or maybe a few years ago now, but he talked about he never learned to read sheet music, because what he did was, now this shows you how much of a talented of his hearing that he worked on when he was a kid. So what he would do is, per his interview, he talked about he would memorize. He would work on it every day. He would do piano recitals, but he would memorize the recitals. He went over and over and over, but he didn't want to learn to read the music. So he would just memorize his phrases. So he would work every day. So you got to understand, when you're young and you're doing this, you're training your ears to hear all the input effects of those, chords and those simulated notes. So when you pick up a guitar, it's going to be very easy. What I'm saying is, after you learn piano, and you learn all these phrasings of Mozart and Beethoven and all that, and you don't learn to read music, you don't have a reference point to read music from, you memorize those phrases, and that will build your hearing tremendously up. And that was part of his learning. He didn't want, he kept saying he memorized and he memorized his timing and his chords and phrasings of the piano, and he would do these recitals and win every recital, because he was not using. See, a lot of people use sheet music as a crutch. They have it in front of them, and they're just playing, and they're playing, and they're reading the music. They're not memorizing the phrasings, unless you work on it nonstop. If he's working 4 hours a day learning this stuff for years, no wonder he's going to win.
Yeah, but it was in his blood. I mean, that the only thing you can say is somebody like that, it was in your blood, and it was that's really what he was destined to do. I mean, there's nothing else that to be that talented and to just kind of be born with it, and take it to the level that he took it.
Exactly, and it won't. And that's the thing,
It's like a Bach or a Beethoven. I don't want to. You don't want to cross those worlds together, but it is kind of there are some similarities.
I think that you won't see another Eddie for probably another 20 years at least. I don't know. Music,
they're out there. I mean, there are the virtuosos that are out there that will never be discovered. But
it's like I was at the NAMM show yesterday, and today I was hearing all these people cranking up and playing all this music. It's like, you have to be original now. Eddie's done his stuff. You got to do your own stuff now, because, like you say, there's 1,000 virtuosos in the world. Look, you got Jason Becker is the person that I was completely floored when I saw him the first time. I saw a video of him at Musician Institute, and he's doing in Atlanta. The first time I ever saw him, and he's playing these arpeggios, Bach, Beethoven, and he's just finger picking this stuff, playing it with no effort, no struggle, and it's like, and he's only like 18 or 19 then, maybe 18 or 17, 18 then, and he was getting ready to do the David Lee Roth album with him, and he's sitting there playing Paganini on a guitar. And the only person I ever seen do that before was Yngwie Malmsteen, and it's like, holy crap, this kid is playing it with no effort, and he's sitting there making stuff up on the fly. So, there's some people that have inert talent without practicing, and they take it, they don't work on it. So you have to keep working on it to be very, very good, but some people can just pick up something and just do it instantly, but it's so sad about Jason, because the inert talent he had automatically was just mind blowing. It seemed to me he made it effortless, meaning he didn't have to worry about, he would sit there play a guitar and doing a yo-yo. It's like, holy moly, think about that. You're sitting there using your left hand to do the chording and playing a song, and he's over there on the right hand playing using a yo-yo.
It's funny you compare him to Paganini, who was the pretty much the original shredder as far as any form of music. He was like, shredding was invented by Paganini, and then the Jason Becker tie into that, who could play Paganini like the master.
Oh yeah, and when I saw that at Atlanta Music Industry or Music, it was called AIM, Atlanta Institute of Music back in the day, and he's sitting there talking to people, interviewing, and say, well, he's asking them, hey, are you a guitar player? No, I'm what did they say? They're a pianist. And he said, well, that's cool. And he's got this guitar in front of him, and he's sitting there playing this guitar, and it's like he's sitting there playing piano pieces on the guitar instantly without even.
Just from the ear, from your brain, directly from your brain to your fingers is what he did.
There's no hesitation, and it's dead on accurate. I mean, it's like down to the millisecond. Like a computer generating a algorithm in milliseconds. That's how his brain was calculating it. It was amazing, to see that. And
it's too bad. I mean, I've only seen a limited amount of stuff from Jason Becker, but when he was performing and when he was on, back, he was 18 and 19, and the stuff that's out there that you can see from him, and he could have been Johnny. I mean, Johnny's good friends with him, and it's just amazing what could have happened, where he could have taken that. You know?
Yeah, he's great. He's great. His parents are great. His friends are great. And I'm sorry, I'm wearing the shades because you guys, it's 1 o'clock in the morning here. Come on.
You're getting yelled at. Johnny's getting
It's
yelled
1
at.
o'clock.
It's 3 a.m. here, man. Woo, I didn't realize what
Yeah,
time it was.
I know. We're getting
Yeah.
we're getting into late territory, so
I know.
Yeah, and we're David. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight, David.
No problem, man. It's been a year since I've been on the show.
I think it's the first time I've talked to you on the show, and I love the kind of insight that you have, and then the going down those rabbit holes of technology and talking about all the tech and all the NAMM stuff and everything else. It's great to hear from you.
Absolutely. Being an engineer, you know, as a musician, here's the other thing: being a musician and engineer ties together because all your math and music all tie together, really. Because I've struggled before I became a musician, you know, in math and stuff. But after I became a musician, around 12 or so, math just come instantly easily, you know. So when you sit there and work with artists a lot, you can intertwine with them from an engineering side or technical side, and it makes it a lot easier. You can break it down a lot simpler than just being just like a regular engineer or something. That's why I think that schools need to teach music more in this country than they do now. That's my thought, you know, because it simulates to different areas of the world of education. You know, music goes across all boundaries in the world. So
yeah,
that's me. Yeah.
So, are we good?
Yeah.
I know.
I'm good. I'm good if you guys are good. And it's all good.
Yes. David Allen Wright. Great seeing you, man.
Yeah.
I know we talked about you coming on, and
I'm gonna try to make Winter NAMM this coming year. I'm gonna try. I really am gonna try to get out there because I really want to see Winter NAMM. How big it is? It's 5 times the size or 6 times the size of Nashville Summer NAMM. You know,
it's 1,000 times the size of that.
Yeah.
It's a million times the size of that. It's huge.
Billion.
It's huge. A billion, trillion. It is
Huge.
It's huge, right? Right, Sean? Sean Silas knows.
Sean Silas. And who
Good
else
to
in
see
the
you, man.
Thank you everyone in the chat. Dutchy 5150, Metal Mike 5150, some Dave dude, Sean Zimmerman, Sean Silas, Dog Pa, the Dog Pa, Papa, everyone else.
Papa.
Some Dave dude, Brett McCord, Nightbot's in the house, Johnny Beane's Clips. Don't forget to join up for Johnny's second channel, Johnny Beane Clips.
Yeah, I've got a second channel now for vlogs and everything. Everything.
Dr.
more.
Jimmy, everyone who's been with us tonight. We've been all over the place, but again, thank you, David Allen Wright, for the commentary on NAMM and all your insight on everything EVH and everything tech related. Thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours. I love the Tesla stuff and the Albert Einstein.
You guys can keep going, but I have to leave.
Yeah.
Well, it's all good. It's all good. Join us again.
You guys can exchange numbers on here, but hang on.
That's right. I'll find you on. Where are you on Facebook, David? I'll find you on Facebook and we'll chat. Okay. I'm not an Instagram guy or the other Twitter and that crap, but and Johnny, thank you again. Thank you for a great night.
Thank you, everybody.
Straturday.
Thank you. And and as far as Jason Becker, his birthday is Monday. I think it's the 22nd.
Excellent. Happy birthday, Jason.
So Jason Becker's birthday is Monday. So, and it doesn't look like he's going to have a birthday party this year because normally a bunch of us we go over to his house, on his birthdays and hang out and stuff. But it doesn't look like that's happening this year. But everybody wish Jason a very happy birthday. On his page, on his Facebooks, on his Twitter, his Instagram, all that stuff. Or down below, if you're watching this, leave a comment. and we'll see you guys soon.
That's right.
Don't hang up, you guys. We'll say goodbye real quick.
And if you're interested in the Apollo 11 stuff, which I was talking about earlier, I'll just say the last thing. Apollo.
You mentioned that again.
Just Google Apollo real time, and it's I love it. It's
if you guys want to fall asleep, real quick.
Well, one of the best things that they have, and there's the last thing I'll say about it, they have the 30-track audio, which you can go scroll through. 1969, they recorded 30 tracks over 9 days. And you can scroll through any track you want to listen to, from Neil Armstrong
you're trying to fall asleep
to the Houston people, and follow every minute of the flight. And it's just as far as techies like us are concerned, it's the real deal, and it's the vintage stuff, and it's all that original digital and analog technology from 1969. Blah, 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 blah. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to follow it until they get home. Let's see if they make it home. Back to the earth.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Post a link to grass growing. Just follow. Oh, there goes David.
Oh, we lost David.
He's gone.
Sorry, David.
He clicked on the link, John.
Man, I guess he was really interested in that, so he had to get right over there.
He clicked the link and he passed right out.
Well, anyway, thank you, Johnny, and it's been a good night.
Yeah. This was great, even though I was sitting here sleeping the entire time.
David's got some great stuff to say. I love it. All, as well as David Nesdahl too. The stuff that these guys, I thought. Just going back a few years, I thought I was a huge Van Halen fan, and then come to find out, reading some of those message boards and discovering Johnny Beane and the family that he's created. I thought I was a huge fan. You guys, are even beyond me. So I love every minute of it.
I'm glad you said fan instead of nerd.
We're nerds too as well. We're definitely nerds.
Thank you for that. So David, there you are, man.
Sorry,
David's back.
I hit the wrong.
We lost
browser.
You for a second. Yeah.
I hit the wrong browser tab.
Oh, I thought as soon as he said moon landing, you just passed out and computer shut off.
Yeah,
David knows what I'm talking about, man. David's he's one of those guys. I think he gets it. He's not one that believes it was a hoax or anything.
No.
He knows how they did it all.
I still work with some people that used to work at NASA. Interesting. I work with people from Boeing Aeronautics and stuff. It's really cool. Pratt Whitney in England does some work for me. It's really cool. But it's really good to work with people that worked at NASA in Titusville, Florida. Stuff like that. It's really neat.
That's technology ties in from music to space and all of that. It was. They had to create a record of what they did in NASA back in the 60s, and whether it was recording the data on those, you see those reels, those giant reels of IBM computers back in the day, where they were just, and that stuff was real, and then they recorded and got the data and were able to make it to the moon and back. So I'm fascinated by it, and I know a lot of other people are. I know Johnny's not too interested in it, but it's cool. It's cool stuff. So thank you. If it wasn't for NASA, we wouldn't have a lot of the technology we have today. So
yep, that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they didn't change the bulb in the moon,
that's right.
That's a good one.
We wouldn't be able to see at night,
It'd be very dim nowadays,
We wouldn't even have X-Files. Think of that, guys.
We wouldn't have green cheese.
Yeah.
Green cheese. Well. Oh, thank you, guys.
All right. David Allen, we love you, man.
Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much. And John BL.
Rock on.
Everybody. And we'll see you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow on the second channel. Subscribe to the second channel. It's there it is right there. real quick. Subscribe to that. Daily weirdness, vlogs, and whatever. Live.
Where's Howie? Is Howie sleeping?
He's sleeping.
Yep.
He's passed out.
Lots of Howie on the second channel. We love Howie.
Yes, yes. Sean Silas, great to see you, man.
Hey, Sean.
Sean Silas, the man. Simon Williams, X Tier, Brett Record, the dog Paw. I think you read some names, John. I'm still trying to get used to this Mac. All right. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
We got.
Are we out? Are we out?
We have another week for the moon landing video.
Hey, they're not going to get back to Earth for another 4 days, I think. Let's see.
It still shows live on my screen.
Yeah, we're still live.
They're on day 6 out of 9, so they've got 3 days to go. I'm still live. Yeah, I'm still showing live.
Oh, man.